call this meeting of the Town of Boothbay Board of Selectmen to order. First, I'd like to ask that we stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Where is it? Here, behind you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda, we have Eileen King, AOS 98 School Superintendent.
I'm holding the really good stuff to the end. Hi, thanks for inviting us. Just accompanying me is Stephanie Hawk, who is a board member for Boothbay Harbor, but she would join us tonight to also help answer any questions. And Brian Bleffin, you know, is a board member from Boothbay, so he's joining us tonight. What I've got tonight is a almost final draft, and I know our budget takes a little bit longer to do. And actually, the reason we haven't adopted it is because we're still waiting for the health insurance costs to come in. And what we'd like to get this budget pared down is actually as much as possible. And I did project a 10% increase. I'm fairly secure that I'll be able to drop that. So I'm hoping that another $30,000 to $35,000 will be able to come out of this budget. So I'm waiting to the last minute before we have to go to print for our warrants and on our town report. As you can see, if you go to the bottom line of this first page here, and before everyone gets nervous, just when you walk through this, you can see there's an increase of $365,000 in expenses from last year's budget to this year's budget. If you go up 2 lines, right where it says all other expenditures and school lunch, you're going to see something that's called the retirement share, and you're going to see a new amount of $118,000. That's part of your $365,000 increase. And I have gone ahead and projected that if our governor's biennium budget does go through, we're going to be responsible for picking up a portion of our teachers' retirement. That's always been a state share, a state responsibility, and the governor has decided to pass that on to the local responsibility. So that is a new cost that I have to anticipate. I need to be on the safe side. As I've said to Jim, that if we do go to town meeting, our budget meeting, and they have taken action and they have voted against the governor's budget, we can amend this amount down on the floor. But to be fiscally responsible, I need to expect that I'm going to incur this cost at this point because I haven't been told differently yet. But once again, if it doesn't pass in Augusta, I will be amending, there'll be a motion to amend that amount out of the budget immediately. So you're going to be able to see the town assessment with the retirement amount, and you're going to see the town assessment without the retirement amount. Going back up to the top of the page, your initial reaction is going to say $164,000 increase in regular instruction. This is really mostly due to 2 more classes that we're adding into the high school. We are reinstating technology education. Those of you might know it as industrial arts. It's a class that was cut several years ago. We've had several parents, we've had board members really encourage us to put it back in the budget. Some of the courses would be furniture workshop, problems in composites, cars and sparks, problems in technology, but really trying to get back to have those kids that really want to look into carpentry, woodworking, to have them have that opportunity to have that at our school. So that's one program we're putting back into the putting it back into the, and that's not planted, back into the budget. The other program we're putting into the budget is we're going to add to our STEM program, which is our science, technology, engineering, and math, which has grown tremendously in the last 2 years that we've had that. And what we're going to be able to do, knowing that the careers in the next 5 years are going to double in science, technology, engineering, and math, we're preparing kids for a future we can't predict and for careers that don't exist. But if you look at the Department of Labor Statistics, this is where the bulk of our careers are going to be for our kids. So we really want to give them an opportunity to have a chance to participate in science, technology, engineering, and math. And would like to actually have a specialized diploma. It would be a Boothbay Region High School diploma that would also have an endorsement in science, technology, engineering, and math that would allow students to go to those schools that are going to really emphasize those careers. Some of the things we're looking at is students enrolled in this would be taking 9 credits in science. They'd be taking 9 credits in technology and engineering, and 9 credits in math, and then have a keystone project that actually be doing something significant their senior year in that area. We're one of a handful of schools doing it. I think it's very innovative, but as I said, we really need to prepare our kids for their future. So a bulk of that 127 for instruction and secondary, about 110 is for those 2 new positions, including the salaries, benefits, the supplies, and everything else. The change from grade 3-8 to pre-K is just moving our pre-K teacher who was in an upper grade down to pre-K, and that's salaries and benefits for that position. As you can see, the regular instruction went down $4,000, so that's really a shift in staffing. Special education is basically focused on the needs of our students, on their caseloads. Most of the increase in special ed is salaries, benefits, and something we call contracted services. And these are the programs we have to provide students with speech, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and psychological testing. That coupled with sequestration, where we did lose, so we're expecting to lose federal funds for local entitlement, which is our special ed funding. We lost about $15,000 K-12 in special ed funds, and that has hurt us a little bit in maintaining the programs. This doesn't have a lot of wiggle room because these plans they're called individual education plans. A committee comes together, we look at the students' testing results, and then they have to come up with a plan to provide services so that child can learn in the most accommodating way possible. So that has been an increase. Other instruction has gone up. Those are co-curricular of the $9,000 increase. We've had a lot of parents come forward, really encouraging us to do a swim program. The swimming program at the Y for the younger students is very, very strong. And then they get to the middle school and high school, and they don't have a team to participate in. So that has gone into the budget this year as well. Support services, mostly our salaries and benefits for your guidance, your health services, your instructional technology departments for both elementary and secondary. And our program instruction are the classes and conferences that we provide for our staff. Library services at the elementary school and the high school, and student assessment are some of the testing materials that we also use for assessment data. Central office, you're going to see a big increase, and then right below you're going to see a big decrease. And basically what the AOS board, which is the board members for all the schools, the Boothbay Harbor CSD, Southport, Edgecombe, and Georgetown, they meet to develop the budget for central office. I have been reminding the other schools, Southport, Edgecombe, and Georgetown, that they receive the services of a curriculum coordinator that is 100% funded by the Boothbay Harbor Community School District. There is a cost share in place. That's how they share my salary. That's how they share the central office salary. So what they've done is they've moved the curriculum coordinator's position over to central office. So you've seen an increase in that salary line. And then the next line down, you're seeing a significant decrease. That's not just for that position, but that's the main reason for that increase. So the curriculum coordinator, which is going to become the director of curriculum, instruction, and technology, so we're taking 2 positions, bringing them together. And that person will oversee those programs for all the schools in the AOS, but now it will be fairly funded. Up until now, it's been funded only out of Boothbay, and the other schools have received services. Now it's going to be applied to that cost share, and your cost share is about 64%, I believe. Transportation has gone down just a little bit. Our facility plant operation maintenance has gone up. Most of that is salaries, benefits, electricity, fuel, and some contracted services that we use to maintain mostly our heating and ventilation system, which is the Honeywell system that we have a contract with them. Debt service has gone down just a little bit, and as I said, the other big increase is the retirement share for $118,000. Unfortunately, because we're minimum receivers, we have to pick up all of it. For a lot of the other towns, it's picked up through their subsidy.
What is the debt?
The overall debt,
No, what is it for? I mean,
the payment of the heat and ventilation, we had two loans that went on to the heating and ventilation program, payment on the high school addition, payment on the superintendent's office. That's pretty much it.
I'm just curious. The whole
Yeah.
schools are older. That's why I asked.
Well, there's quite a large note it was about $684,000 when we did the heating ventilation project 1. That is at a 0% interest, and that was a 10-year note through the main bond bank. And then as we looked at our other issues, I think you're on the trustees end. I think as we looked at the other issues, we realized that we had a lot of other work that could be done at the same time. We took out another large note for about $485,000. We spread it out over 30 years, knowing that when the high school payment comes due, we're going to maintain that level of debt, and then within 2 years after that, we'll have that paid off. I also just refinanced that from 4.8 down to 3.39, I think that is. And so we'll be reducing our debt. I expect to be out of debt completely in 3 to 4 years.
Just to go on record, Douglas did vote to spend money. Just curious.
I don't
You're gonna
recall.
pay for that?
I don't recall the vote.
Did you say debt service is going down?
No, it's right there about the same.
Okay, because it went up.
Oh, it's gone. I'm sorry, it's gone up 1,400. That's right. It's gone up just a little bit. The next page. I'm sure I have written it out. The next page is our projected revenue, and it doesn't matter if it's with retirement or not. Our general fund balance over the years right now is maintaining pretty steady at $350,000. At the end of this year, we are going to have a balance in the international program. This is not a money-making. We didn't do this to make money. We didn't do it to keep teachers. We only have 8 kids right now, but overall, in the last couple of years, we've had a balance that we are using to apply to offset expenditures. Our state subsidy has gone up, and this is accurate. 2 years ago, there was a sleeper, I'm going to call it a sleeper, a piece of legislation that passed through. It was called the Economically Disadvantaged Allocation. And basically, that said that if you have a certain valuation and a certain mill rate, and you meet the state average for free and reduced lunches, they will take a different look at your state subsidy. Well, we are 2.6% above state average for free and reduced lunch. Darlene, when I heard about this law, I said, Darlene, we need to pay very close attention to this and make sure that what we used to have is students charging lunches and not paying, because moms and dad are really proud and didn't want to fill out that paperwork. The paperwork is highly confidential. Only Darlene knows who receives free and reduced lunch, because the kids go through the lunch line, they plug in their numbers, and no one else knows what happens after those numbers are plugged in. So we have been monitoring that. We've been making sure that the parents have the information about changes in criteria for free and reduced lunch. Well, we are 2.6% above, so we received $161,000 more in state subsidy this year. Actually, it would have been even more, about 50 more, if we hadn't had the curtailment. So 161 is good. I won't complain, but if we hadn't had the curtailment, it would have been a little bit more. Elementary tuition, secondary tuition has gone down a little bit. That's because we're estimating a few less students. Special ed tuition has gone up because we're expecting a few more students that fall into the special ed programs. It doesn't change anything. It just, the more that we can actually put in our special ed budget, because we receive 30% of our subsidy from special ed, the more that we can actually make sure that our costs are reflected there. It works better in our favor for state subsidy. The school psychologist is a cost share across the district. And then interest income and gate receipts has gone down, and that's just our revenue right there. So out of a now this is with our retirement share, at a $9 million budget, our revenue is $1,387,000, so our assessment to the town is $766. All right, so basically our revenue is up, our assessment is up $209,000 over last year. The second half of this, and this is why I do this, because you all flip to this page first and then you never listen, right, Jim? Wait. So our assessment to the towns at this point, and remember the board has not adopted the budget. We're still hoping that the health insurance rates will come in, and we're hoping they're going to be much less than the 10% that I anticipated. But I always feel shoot high, and it's easier to cut at this point of the year than it is to go up. Right now, if you look at the regular budget of $7,409,000, we have to back the debt service out, which we've done. That's $252,000. Our adult debt is $37,300. So your total amount is $7,698,000 for Boothbay because of the cost share and student population. I'm sorry, reading the wrong one. It's $5,038,000. Let me start over. Regular budget $5,038,000. Your debt service is $151,000, and your adult debt is $22,000. That brings your budget to $5,002,000 at 68%. Now, with the retirement share, that's a 2.81% increase over last year, or $142,000. You want me to go over that again?
No, unless you make the number go down.
Well, turn the page. This is without the retirement share. So your budget then becomes, 68% of the budget then becomes $4,958. Your debt service remains the same at $151,000. Your adult ed is $22,000. That's $5,131,000. Compared to last year, it's a $62,000 increase, or a 1.23% increase.
I like this one better.
I do too. And I'm really hoping that this is the one that we will get. I think even if you do $35,000 decrease in health insurance, I don't think it's going to change dramatically, but I'm hearing that there's no way it's going to pass. I don't anticipate, so I thought it was only fair to bring both scenarios to you so you have an idea of what you're looking at.
Are you fairly confident with the state subsidy? I mean, he hasn't wanted to touch that at all?
Well, you know, the state giveth and the state taketh away, and this number came out last year, and you get your preliminary subsidy numbers usually early February, and it was like, whoo, and I called and I said, is this the economically disadvantaged allocation? And I was told yes, it was. Well, it kind of disappeared afterwards. They said they ran the numbers again, and we didn't quite hit the target. So this year when it came out, I didn't get excited, and I called and I said, can you run the numbers again? And it turned out we're 2.6 above the state average. So I feel very confident with those numbers.
So the government proposed budget doesn't do away with that?
No.
That's good news.
Out-of-town students, how do you bill them? I mean, do you have a set, do you figure out what it costs per student, divide by the budget, and bill that amount?
No, we have two rates. We have state rates and we have the CSD rate. And in order for us to keep the revenue in, the Board of Trustees voted to charge the state rate, which is slightly below what the CSD rate is. Their thought process was, you know, we can charge $1,200 more and get zero, or we can charge $8,400 and get $8,400, because the state rate is the same.
But I guess my question would be is if the taxpayers of the area are paying $1,500 a student, whatever that number is, then students coming in, shouldn't they have to pay the same? I mean, why should they get a discount because they live out of town? Because
the actual cost of bringing a child in is not the actual cost of educating a child, because they're not paying. You're paying for the bricks and the mortar, you're paying for buses. So if a student comes in, we're not spending $8,000 on that student. If we spend $1,000, I'd be surprised. So you do have your state rates, but the Board of Trustees said instead of losing all of the allocation completely, $8,000, they'd rather lose the $1,200 and keep us in a place where we can offer programs, offer enough kids for sports programs, have enough for drama programs, and that was one of the things they felt that they could do. If you look at like some of my other schools, or when the smaller schools are allowing kids to come in from other towns for tuition, well, they're not charging their actual tuition costs because not everything's calculated into that, but they're saying for $5,000 you can come, and they'd rather have the $5,000. Does it cost $8,800 to educate a high school student? No, it doesn't. So it does, we do figure in that they're gonna get that $8,000 that we do charge. It's a little bit less than what we can charge, but it does go to offset salaries, it goes to offset benefits, it goes to offset everything else that we do.
Is that what other schools charge as well?
It's state rate, yeah, we stay competitive with the state.
What you just said, I'm just clarifying in my own head, but somebody could actually charge less if they so desired. Some
Yeah, I could
schools
actually
just-
go up for, I could actually bid out on tuition. And some schools are getting pretty creative that way to get the tuition revenues, they're going into bidding wars.
So we could reduce our rate to a more competitive incremental cost of what it costs to educate that student.
Right, and
To try
potentially
to,
get
to try
more,
to bring in more business.
and get, right.
You know, once you found your broke-even point per student, for additional student, you know, you could really drop it probably.
We've stayed at the state rates, we haven't dropped below that. And our rate varies, sometimes it's very close. Years ago, it was really far apart, now it's, I think it's about 1,200.
Now, I know when you were here a year ago, I think we talked about Wiscasset joining the AOS. Where's that?
I met with actually the planning board from the Westport Island committee and from Wiscasset. I had several meetings with them this summer, and they were very interested in what we were doing and how we were set up, and the boards voted to continue to have an open dialogue, and I got a letter, I'm going to say late August, saying from the Wiscasset board that they were looking to go it on their own.
How many students do they have right now?
You know, the elementary school has about 241. I think the high school is about 100 plus. But I don't have the breakdown of whether that's just resident students and how many are coming in from the sending towns or not. I can get that for you.
How many do we have right now?
Right now, we have about 568 of our own students on the Hill.
Where does that compare to, say, 5 years ago?
We're down by about 200 students.
Have you projected out to what it may be in another 5 years?
Well, I was asked to do that. I can project out based on current enrollment trends right now. And actually, the town would have the birth to 4-year-old program trends because they have that. They get that information. But I have not done that, but I can do that.
Because I know that there's probably some people out there that aren't going to like to hear this, but maybe it's time that we look at Wiscasset and think about consolidation.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't want them, I mean, that's
We
the heck of
certainly
it.
had opened the doors. We provided them with all the information they wanted. We made ourselves available. I spent hours, I said probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 hours in different meetings and letting them know what services could be provided, because we've been through this with Georgetown, we had a really good track record of how things work, what we did to work together, and I showed them our interlocal agreement, I showed them our AOS plan, and I did the cost analysis on what it would cost them to join us, so they knew if they became part of the AOS, they knew exactly what their responsibility, I think it was 43%, which lowered everyone else's responsibility. We certainly made ourselves completely available to further any discussion, but I think they're really interested in local control and keeping things the way they are.
Yeah, it just seemed to make sense to me with declining enrollment like we've had over the last decade and that they've also had, that the only way to lower cost is going to be to consolidate.
What was the peak of enrollment? Must have been close to 900?
I think it was about 8. When I came in 1994, the elementary school was at 6, and I think the high school's always been about 250. Maybe it went up to 3 at one point, but at the very highest it was, yes.
Yeah, I think when Stefan and I were there, it was
Yeah,
near
well,
300.
That was just a year before 94, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was just like in 93, right?
93.
Yeah.
We had, what, 60-something, I think, in our class?
Yeah, we graduated
And we had-
67 or
Yeah,
68.
and then we had high school classes of 80, 82 that we graduated, and I remember those. I remember putting them on the stage and them barely fitting, and
When we went in as a freshman class, we were much higher than that. We lost some through attrition and other factors. But
and then some of the sending schools have also lost some of their enrollment, so that's impacting the number of kids that are coming down for Edgecombe and Southport.
So another question that's not budget related at all, curiosity. Why is 60% passing and not 70? It seems awful low to me.
I'll have to ask. Our principal and I have talked about that, and we talked about changing that, and it was about a year ago, and we haven't done that. We both agree it should be about 68. And it's funny you mentioned that. When you said 60%, I'm thinking cost share, but no. I agree with you, and Dan and I have talked about that, and we've actually talked about doing some proposals to change that, because everything else is becoming much more rigorous, and we're offering a whole variety of different kinds of classes. We really think we should be also making that grade average a little bit.
With all the talk about kids not being ready for college, well, I don't wonder if they pass through high school with a 60, that's 6 out of 10. That's not ready for college, in my opinion.
I agree with you.
You mentioned that you're getting back into the technology classes in the secondary, in the high school. Where are we with the mentor program?
With the
Mentor program?
still very strong. We have students going out in a variety of different places in the community. I don't have a list of where they are right now, but a lot of them go up to St. Andrews Village. A lot of them are working one-on-one with different, private workers. It's still being overseen through the guidance program and some through our humanities program. But we're making those opportunities available for any student that wants it. We had one doing hospitality last year and was traveling, I believe, to Bath to get that done.
Well, I was thinking where you mentioned furniture, you mentioned composites, carpentry. I'm thinking more on the lines of Hudgens, Elkins, any one of the builders that are in town. Where are we with them? I know, Stephanie, I think you folks were a mentor down to Hogs.
We didn't have one this year, but well, actually we did, but he's not. So yes, we get one every year.
I think as we start these programs up, we'll certainly have more of a reason to have a relationship. However, if a student's interested in going to Hodgson or going to any of the places you mentioned, we will contact them. Sometimes their liability and their insurance does not allow kids to be doing certain things, so it really depends on what they want to do. If they want to work in the accounting department, that certainly usually isn't an issue, but if they're working with tools and machinery, it becomes a liability issue that we have had those discussions with. But anyone that wants to take on any of our kids into a mentorship, we absolutely embrace it, and we think it's a great opportunity for them, and it's also a way to get them to stay here.
If Wiscasset was to zone AOS, wouldn't they stand to lose a few administrative jobs? Looking at it from their local standpoint?
If they were to join, we would already have an administrative team in place. There would be a superintendent, there'd be the director of curriculum, instruction, and technology. We have the director of plan, operation, maintenance, transportation, and safety.
Well, that's why I say that they would stand to lose a few jobs locally, wouldn't they?
I believe so.
This is probably part of their decision maybe.
Well, yes and no, because don't they already belong to an alternative organization?
They belong to an RSU,
Okay.
Regional School Unit, and that was the first consolidation plan that actually surfaced, and that was the plan where you would come together, you would join a regional school district, and all your assets would go with you, and that became a real issue for the people in this community because they didn't want to turn all their buildings and their buses and things that they own over to, and Wiscasset did, and getting it all back now at the right cost and the right value, I think has been an interesting process. But there would be, obviously, that we wouldn't need duplication of services. So I don't think there'd be a lot. They would need a superintendent, so that wouldn't be, but I think maybe plan, operation, and maintenance or transportation, we wouldn't need the duplication of those services.
Well, that's what I was thinking is the reason why they wouldn't want to consolidate.
I really think they really want to go, from the conversation I had was they thank you very much and for your time and the discussion, and we just really think we want to kind of be our own entity. And I said, okay.
What's the average class size that we have right now, at the high school in particular?
Right now at the high school, if you look at the repetitive classes, the classes we offer more sections to, like if we have 2 or 3 sections of them, some are small, some are large. I did that calculation. We're looking at about 15 to 1. Now, the reason we have to offer some classes more than once is because what they're up against, what the schedule is. So if we have a student that wants to take a foreign language and they want to take an AP science, and they want to take a calculus, and they want to take, those classes quite often go against each other. We also share staff between the elementary and the high school, so we have to work with those schedules as well to make sure that if Meredith Duke is doing band at the elementary school, it's offered at the high school at a certain time. So our basic class rate, size rate is about 15 to 1 K through 12. We don't go much higher than 24, 25 in the high school. Some of our freshman classes can be that large. And we do have some small classes of advanced and college placement programs. We also are working around the Bath Voc schedule. So we have kids going to Bath Voc. We want them to be able to take the college prep English class if they want to. So we have to offer that for the morning and afternoon sessions. So certification falls into it. If you're certified in science, it doesn't mean you can teach every kind of science. You have life science, you have physical science, so there's just a lot of different reasons, but basically we try to offer a couple classes several times so that it gives the kids a variety to take as many courses as they need to take.
Have we looked at the neighboring high schools to see if we could share staff where they may have small classes as we do?
I've talked to the superintendent of Wiscasset, not the one that's currently there, and I talked years ago, and what we were doing is we were actually letting kids go to and from, not to and from, but they were offering a class that we didn't, and a student could get there and get back, we let that happen. But we haven't gotten to the point of looking at sharing staffing right now. We certainly would if we had a situation where we had a handful of kids, but I think what we developed worked really well, is that we had some kids that had, I can't remember the course, but we didn't offer anything like it. And it was offered first thing in the morning, and so with the parents' permission, Wiscasset and our permission, that student and their own transportation got themselves there and got themselves back. So those are the things we're doing to be creative. Also doing some online stuff to be creative as well. The STEM is hands-on. It's nothing that we can do online. No one else is offering it in our area, and we really think it's important to, as much as we want to focus on, a reasonable budget, we also are preparing our kids for their future. We need to give them the opportunities to participate in classes that are most probably going to be part of their future career.
Has any thought ever been given to off-site teachers?
Off-site.
Like the colleges do?
Webinars, kind of, so to speak?
Yeah.
We've talked about that, and we've had some kids actually participate in some online learning. It's not being done a lot right now, but we certainly would be open to that. I mean, I got a degree that was completely online. I never left Boothbay. So I like online learning. You've got to have certain criteria to make sure that it's, accredited. You're going to have an adult in the room anyway to supervise students. And you're going to make sure that it meets the programming that we're offering.
Anyone else?
I'm satisfied.
Two questions. Under your revenue stream, what are gate receipts?
What you pay to get into the activities, like the football games and the basketball games.
Okay, next question. There was an article in today's Portland Press Herald about AP courses being offered online and an expansion of that. Do we look at online AP courses for anybody? And when you test out of an AP class, is it an online test or is it a proctored test?
Well, it depends on which online program you're taking. It would have to be a proctored test, and we have not looked at online AP classes yet, but we certainly will be. We certainly would be open to doing that.
Do you offer enough AP classes for the students that want them?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
We have 7 right now.
Eileen, can we read into these gate receipts where you're losing money that you're projecting that the teams aren't going to be as good as next year?
No.
Just curious.
You're pretty good this year.
It's actually based on actuals for this year. I know.
Just curious. I didn't know if you had a crystal ball that we all,
No, should I put it up to 20,000?
that Channel 7 land would like to hear.
No, it's actually what we do is we look at our current gate receipts and we look at an average, and that's where they're at.
Just want to give you a hard time.
Oh, thank you.
More seniors go to the games.
So this is the second year in a row that you guys have come to our meeting. So thank you to Eileen and the board members that come. It's nice to get this, we get a whole picture of what's happening to our tax rate, to wrap it up right before we go to town meeting. So we appreciate your time coming here.
Yeah, and as soon as the board adopts our budget, I will make sure that those numbers get to Jim immediately so that he'll have accurate numbers, and then our budget will be the waiting game this year. If the governor's proposal does not go through, you can expect a amending down on the floor of that 118,000, which means your second page would be the accurate assessment of the town.
Sorry, I had a question earlier before you finished up. Facilities and operational maintenance costs, you know, they're always high, they're always getting higher. Is anyone looking into any kind of streams to lower those?
We'd like to go completely green. We're looking, yeah, and we've also looked at some solar costs and things like that.
Did Grid Solar get a hold of you guys? Was that not part of their package?
That,
So they went to the YMCA to give you guys?
I don't know, they approached us.
Yeah, no, we weren't part of the package.
Okay.
We're having a lot of conversations about especially reducing our water use. And so we are looking at what we can do to lower those costs.
Where does that take place, in case anyone in the public
The Board of
ever
Trustees
wants-
meetings, yeah.
okay.
First Wednesday of every month, 5:15, Boothbay Region High School Library.
And then the last thing, we're doing comprehensive planning. And Brian is participating, and so is John. And we appreciate the school being part of that. So I try to plug it every time I get Brian in the room.
Thanks, Jim. I would just add to that I think, again, the addition of the STEM programming, the science and technology is you know, a direct result of those kinds of conversations that we're having. It's a very good response to the conversations that we're having at those types of meetings and the communications we're having in our community. So I think it's great work on Eileen's part and the staff's part, the principals for listening to that communication and that dialogue that's going on in our community and responding to it and delivering to the students. So she's done a super job, and so haven't the other administrators putting this budget together, as always.
And last closing note, as far as I'm just happy that industrial arts is actually back. I was quite disappointed to hear that we parted ways years ago.
It's nice to hear more hands-on stuff.
Well, that's the STEM, one of the things that I really, when we first started doing the science, technology, engineering, math programs, you know, I said to Dan, I said, I want more electives, I want more meaningful electives, not that they weren't meaningful, but ones that are career promoting. And so we really looked at this program, and it was really interesting to go in to watch these classes, because it was every student from every walk of life, from every background, from every level of strength and every area of weakness, standing side by side, solving the same problems, working hands on hands, doing these things, and it was really exciting to watch that interaction and the excitement. And it didn't matter who you were, and it didn't matter, you know, what grades you got. It was a real learning environment, real problem solving. It was really exciting, and we brought the technology education, or they call it industrial technology, but
Shop.
I know, but
I knew I was going to totally file it up when I said industrial arts, but that's what I know it is.
But that's what everyone knows it as. That's why I use it, to no disrespect to that department. So.
All right. Well, Mike?
One last question to Eileen.
Yep.
Do you think you might be able to get back to Jim and the board about where you see enrollment being 5
Yes,
years down the
yes,
road?
I'll make sure you get that information.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Frank?
You know, when you look at industrial technology, we have some great wealth in our own industrial park, and it would really behoove it to have students tour some of the businesses in there and get a flavor for what goes on in the industrial park.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm excited about bringing it back, and we're also going to be weaving it into the middle school.
Field trip to Mars.
So do you still have all the old, the big equipment?
Get the automotive shop going.
Okay, that's a contradiction.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much for having us.
We appreciate it.
Mitchell.
See you later.
See you later.
Have a good evening.
Done. We should just give us, and this is gonna take after it goes now.
Next up, we have Jimmy Hanna and Bob Mitchell.
We just figured, Jim, we'd do that to get them, so they didn't have to sit through the half hour. Sorry.
No worries. My job.
Okay, thanks for having us up.
Jimmy, Hannah, and I have properties just down the road, the old firehouse and Prince Charming, and have some concerns about the proposed sidewalk project from Boothbay Harbor to Boothbay. Primarily to do with raised sidewalk in front of our businesses. It was our understanding, for better or for worse, I guess, that initially was to have been a painted sidewalk at grade, which would have been terrific. And the concerns we have, if that is a raised sidewalk, is how that would affect our ability to have people come and go from the business and parking. That's a big concern, an access off of 27. Another concern was for snow plowing. It's a pretty tough spot to clear out to begin with, and if we have a raised sidewalk there, getting a commercial snow plow vehicle in to help clear in front would be real tough. I think we'd have to do it by hand. We were concerned a little bit also, I don't know how the rules are about liability, but if someone were to, for lack of a better term, fall off the edge of a sidewalk in front of one of our businesses, would we be liable for an injury that was sustained there? One of the things that happened, I think, as a result of the paving that happened on 27 is it raised the road level, and water doesn't clear that property very gracefully when that road was raised, and we're some concern about the raised sidewalk creating even more of a problem there for us. We get some infiltration on the foundation and so forth. No ill feeling at all about the idea, the concept of the walkway. It's just that raised section in front of our buildings that we're concerned about. I don't know, Tim, if you have anything?
Yeah, if I may just add, my other than drainage and snow plowing, which is going to be a bear, my business relies almost entirely on people being able to swing in, run in, drop off, pick up, order, whatever. And I cannot imagine what's going to happen if they're no longer able to do that. And by that I mean if with a raised sidewalk, our parking is virtually eliminated. And that is an enormous concern to the viability and longevity of my business, to tell you the truth. That's what I'm worried about. So, that's it.
I'd mentioned to Stevie earlier, I spoke to both Bob and Jimmy about the raised sidewalk, and I agreed with them that I thought it was completely foolish to put a raised sidewalk across their parking lots, because it would be extremely detrimental to both of them. And I went so far as to tell them that if they wanted me to write a letter personally to DOT telling them that I would. So I'll let you guys chime in, but I agree wholeheartedly.
My truck barely fits in their parking lot now. I mean, I was down there a month or so ago. When you pull in, you just barely fit. With a raised sidewalk, there is no parking, period.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, even if there were, and I don't know the dimensions of the sidewalk or what the plans are, but even the thought had crossed our mind to pull in and we'd lose half our parking. We have about 4 parking places now, maybe 5. We'd be reduced to 2 or 3 if we parked parallel to the building, parallel to the road. But then with the raised sidewalk, who's going to do that?
Right.
How would you do that? And my other concern is someone either riding a bike or stepping off of that sidewalk.
Didn't you voice your concerns to DOT?
Let me address all of them.
I was going to say, I think all of us on this board agree with your concerns. DOT is the issue, not the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
So,
and knowing that we didn't want to take on local battles with property owners, when we submitted the design, there were some areas where we didn't meet the letter of design standards that we want to, and this is one area where we proposed a flush sidewalk because they really don't have a parking lot as much as they have area that they're utilizing for parking that exists in the right of way. That obviously didn't go over very well with MDOT. It was one of the first things that they wanted to adjust in our design, and obviously they put in they've come forward with the raised sidewalk. Now, is there area within DOT to expand outside of how they normally do designs? Yes, because we also told them, we also played a game of chicken on Hammond Lumber. They wanted us to close up Hammond Lumber's entrance to their yard across the way, and we said, we're not picking that fight. If you want to, go pick it. And the way it is on the last engineered drawing is they're not going to make Hammond Lumber close that off. So I guess if there's enough squeaking, they will adjust. But some of the things that they do point out is drainage. We have to show DOT that we can properly drain the area. They won't allow us to go through with the project. And we think we've shown that to them. So, but when DOT comes in and does their own maintenance paving, no, they don't do any of those designs. They just come in, lay asphalt, and leave. So we think the drainage will actually be better after this project.
Are you meaning that you have incorporated some sort of a drain system into this construction?
Yeah. Matter of fact, we're taking on a little bit of the burden of the fact that that's just a poorly draining road already by wanting to put a sidewalk in. DOT's made us add catch basins and stuff like that along the corridor. As far as liability for accidents in regard to pedestrians or bikers, is that this sidewalk is drawn to ADA specifications, and it is the property of the state of Maine. The property owners that are at the edge of the right-of-way wouldn't be held responsible for a pedestrian being injured, especially if it was designed to specifications.
So given that you told me that the state and town is not subject to any liability, how do I know, how am I assured that we're absolved from some lawyer and somebody being injured going to the deep pockets? They perceive any business or property owner to have deep pockets, if they only knew. But so
most often than not, those people that are looking for the big payday are looking for the deep pockets, and usually that is the town or the state before it is a small business. Not that we have deep pockets, but we have the backing of all the taxpayers in the town, and that usually looks like deep pockets to some people. But we are protected by tort claim laws, so as long as it's done to spec, and as long as it was built correctly, and as long as it's maintained reasonably, then I couldn't see where the property owner would be held liable for anything.
Of course, if we manage to get at grade sidewalks, there won't be any issue at all.
Well, I actually do worry about a little bit of liability in there. So let's say we do bend the specification to a flush. This is why DOT is pushing this really hard, is there's no traffic deterrence to that. So you're telling people walk here. This is a pedestrian travel way, but there's no traffic deterrence at all. So that's what they're worried. They're worried about their own liability. So when we're talking about liability, we're seeing it from both.
How is a raised, just for my own information, how does a raised sidewalk prevent traffic from causing any damage?
Yeah, not that you're supposed to laugh at some of these things, but when we were on our last phone conference call, we were talking about raised sidewalks and their traffic deterrence, and I said, well, that's not much of a deterrent to some vehicles. I mean, I drive a full-size pickup truck. It's not, my truck's not going to care about a raised sidewalk. But apparently there's enough studies out there that DOT feels like in some instances that raised sidewalk is enough traffic deterrence to protect the pedestrian.
But I have to say, in this case here, having a sidewalk for people to walk on isn't a good enough reason to put two businesses out of business, which is basically what you do if you put a raised sidewalk across there. And that makes absolutely no sense. DOT needs to back off. They need to put it in flush and have it raised where it makes sense.
You said if there's enough squeak, so let's squeak. I mean, if squeaky wheels gets the grease, we can become a squeaky wheel, can't we?
Yeah, and we've made concessions where we thought it was practical. At one point in time, they wanted to close off this entire area and leave an entrance for the parking lot that goes in there. And we made them concede to making 3 different entrances.
So what are they doing at driveways? They must have step downs for driveway entrances and things like that.
Yeah, and there's rules and specifications for how wide they can be.
And the sidewalk must flatten out, be at grade level where there's a driveway or some sort of entrance.
Right, but then.
So that's what we proposed.
But that's the deal, is that it's a certain width that it can be.
And obviously.
You're gonna way exceed the length of that building.
Right. And you know, we've brought up the concerns. I mean, we're not trying to be ignorant of the concerns of the property owners. We're just trying to deal with DOT, which is sometimes a little bit difficult. I mean, and when we bring up things like, well, they'll lose parking, or that this is going to be a hindrance to their business, is they point out that there's parking in the back of the business, and that really the parking that is occurring right now is actually happening in the right-of-way, which is not a very good practice, especially now that you're perpendicular to the road and backing in and out of the road when customers are coming.
It's been that way for decades.
Right.
You know, I mean,
But just because it's such a danger, that's what they're trying to stop with this.
They're trying to slowly weed, kind of like when we were talking about non-conforming lots. These instances, they don't fit within the specification of roads as they see them. They're trying to weed them out slowly, one by one.
You're calling behind our buildings a parking lot. I've done the math on that. There are just enough parking places out there for the apartment tenants and the property owners. There is no additional parking back there for clients. Something I wanted to put in this letter to the DOT, but we elected not to, but I'm going to bring up so that it's on the record. If DOT insists on removing our parking and putting us out of business, then I would strongly encourage that maybe they would consider, no, not maybe, they ought to consider taking my property and perhaps Bob's by eminent domain. If they're going to put me out of business, then take the building, pay me for it, and tear it down. Do whatever they want to do.
Well, in this project, this is a locally administered project with a certain budget, and I can tell you that as soon as we run into a roadblock in which we can't navigate, that's the end of the project. So, eminent domain and purchasing of properties would put us over budget and immediately stop the project.
If DOT is that concerned about the safety issue going across there, I hope they realize that what they would create by putting a raised sidewalk across that parking lot would be parking on the street, which would be a much more dangerous situation than what is currently there.
No, I don't think DOT wants to see any parking on the other side of the sidewalk.
Whether they want it or not, that's what would end up happening.
I never thought of that either, but it's, people are going to park. When I first bought the building 12 or 13 years ago and moved my business down to it, I tried to get people to go out back and park, or at least to go out back and turn around instead of trying to back into the highway. No one will do that. It's like saying, we have plenty of parking 200 yards over there. Just park over there and walk it. They're not going to do it. People don't walk anymore.
When the car practice office was there, it was the same way. People pulled in straight and back right out into the road.
Exactly.
Think back to when it was the fire station.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, if they take and put 3 flush cuts in there to get to the back parking lots, as they say, it's just going to be enough little raised sections of sidewalk going to be a pain in the ass. It's just going to be in the way. It's a tough situation, it really is.
There are about 1 million obstacles that come up when you're administering a project of this scale that could kill the project, and we try to continue the project when these come up. We knew about the issues that they have here, and we've tried to engineer around them, and obviously we haven't got to a place that satisfies everyone. But then that's up to you guys to figure out, is when we get to the final drawing and we've tried to find every way to navigate around issues, is it still worth it to build the project?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure that I would support it if it's going to put 2 businesses out of business.
Well, DOT has a long-range vision. And you think about it, they're thinking about what a state road should look like 50 years from now too, because they'll only build a sidewalk one time in the next 50 to 100 years. It'll actually be fighting for money 50 years from now to fix it again. And to them, they don't see, they can't focus on the nature of the business, because in 5 years after they build the sidewalk, somebody could come in, buy them out, buy their business, and put it in someplace that has a pedestrian-friendly appeal to it that needs foot traffic. So they don't usually focus on the very nature of the business as it is there. They look at the big scheme of what is best for public transportation and safety.
But our job is to focus on what is there now and the business is there now.
Amen.
You know, I mean, I
If
don't know how else to put it.
If I may, I own another building in Waldoboro that I've owned for 25 years. And in their infinite wisdom, DOT came in 2006. They removed all parking curbside, eliminated that. They promised us, across the street, out of the side of the hill on Friendship Street, they had made a parking lot years ago. DOT promised us that because they were going to remove the street parking in front of a commercial building, that they would extend into the side of the hill across the street enough parking places to replace the parking places that were removed. That was in 2006. And we're still waiting for that parking. I was at a town meeting, a selectmen's meeting in Waldoboro 3 weeks ago, going through the same problem. Now the town realizes that they've lost commercial parking. They've lost 3 businesses, mine being one of them, because I moved away. I came down here because it was more business friendly. Now the town is trying to revive the town and get businesses to go back down in the village, and nobody will go because there's no parking. You cannot get people to park, and I, as the landlord, am in fear of losing 2 of my biggest tenants who rely on parking. One's a beauty salon, one's a physical therapist. They have to have parking. The state, DOT, in their infinite judgment, reneged on their promise to the town and to us, the taxpayers, and never provided the additional parking, period. So I have experience with DOT and their infinite wisdom and fairness.
I don't know if you took that as I'm a DOT sympathizer, actually, because I sit in here most of the time and bag on them. So,
no, but I consider that what you're saying is representative of DOT, and I don't mean to be addressing you personally. Right. Not at all. I'm speaking of DOT and my experience with them and what I see happening again.
We were discussing the, I mean, and once again, this is preliminary engineer. We're not at a final product yet, which is why it's still malleable and we're able to talk about it. But I was discussing this with the sewer district, who has some concerns as well, and I told them that my responsibility is to engineer this or propose ways to engineer and mitigate people's concerns until we get to a product where we can't move it around anymore. And then at that point, it's up to people to make decisions about whether the project is still viable. And in your instance, in the area in front of your property, I'm at the point where I can't push DOT any further than what they've already done. So it's up to either DOT to give or us to decide whether we like the project.
Well, we can
In an effort to make a lot of squeaking, I'm making a motion that the Boothbay Board of Selectmen draft a letter to DOT insisting that the sidewalk across the properties at 1036 Wiscasset Road and 1038 Wiscasset Road be flush with the road and not raised, because they don't need their parking lots cut off by a raised sidewalk. Yes.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to draft a letter to DOT insisting that the sidewalk across the Prince Charming property and the old firehouse be flush with the road. Comments? Being none, all those in favor? Motion passes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you
very much.
Is there a date that that project is supposed to be submitted and finalized, or is it just still in the works right now?
Good question. I don't know when that will be finalized. We're still going over some of the comments that DOT has given us, so we're still in preliminary engineering.
Two things that I can.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Next, Mike O'Donnell. Good evening.
Good evening, thank you. So,
introduce myself again. I'm Michael O'Donnell, and I am currently working, my company is hired as your assessors, and I am the guy who comes here every week to do the assessing work. But long before we were assessors, our company was a map-making company. My father started it when I was born 52 years ago, and we've been making property tax maps through New England ever since then. So, since we've been in the seat as the assessors, one of the things we noticed was that you're not in a particularly good position with respect to property tax maps. Now you might say, well, why do we need new maps? We have maps. Why can't you just fix the ones you have? And I figured that'd be a good place to start. If you look at this map here, and I realize it's a long ways away, I'm just going to show you really general stuff, but this is one of your existing property tax maps. And this is your existing zoning map. And I don't want to beat up on the companies that did this work. I think that, I don't know what the contract was when they did this, but I can tell you that we have basically 3 reasons why we might want to do new maps. One of the reasons is we have an opportunity coming up this summer that nobody before us had. Lincoln County is organizing with the Maine Office of GIS and the Maine Geo Library Board to do a new flight of aerial photography. It's going to be much higher resolution than we've seen in the past. And I had a little conversation earlier with one of the selectmen who mentioned, when you look at Google Earth and you go zipping around the state, some places the photos are just terrific and others they're really mediocre. We're going to have terrific photos the end of this summer. Now, if we build a new tax map set, we have a brand new high resolution photo set to work with. So we can make a set that is accurate, real world accurate. So it can be used for many other things other than just putting a set of maps on the table. That was not available to this outfit at the time that they did it. I think they did a pretty good job geospatially. If you line their work up over the existing photos, they line up more or less, but you couldn't do much with that. If you were a landowner and you wanted to expand your building, you couldn't open up Google Earth, bring in the tax map overlay, and it's not like it'll line up that well, it's not going to get you much. So the main reason is we got these new photos coming that are going to allow us to make a map set that you couldn't have done in the past. The second reason is, this was done by one company. This was done by the Sheepshead Valley Conservation Association. And they were just sort of freelancing and offering up a service. It's a wonderful thing, and they did a pretty good job, but there's no connection here. When the changes are made to the tax maps, they're not made to this. And it goes a little further in that when they did this, it was a number of years ago. Technology has changed. They did this at the time that we asked them to do it, and it still exists in older software that they don't even use anymore. And when we asked them the other day to produce a map for us, they said, you know, we really don't have that set up. We had that at the time we did it, but we didn't maintain it. There was no sort of future setup for that. They weren't maintaining it annually. There was no connection between the annual tax map revisions and the zoning map. So this is sort of stale, and it's not convenient to update it, even though we had some needs for some new prints and new images and some new changes. We kind of have to rebuild this if we want to use it at all. The third reason, this map, I don't know if you can see from where you are, I'm going to just unclip it and hand it to the selectman here. There's not a lot on it. We don't have dimensions. We don't have acreages. We don't have, the street names are there, but they're kind of hard to read. We don't have a lot of stuff that you might want in a tax map to make it easier to depict a lot, easier to draw a lot. It's very, very basic. And in my opinion, as a mapper and an assessor, that causes more work in the long run. You can't really tell dimensions. You can scale because it's a scaled map, but it really needs to be on the map. Now, this map here, this is a new map that I just finished for the town of Carlisle, Massachusetts. I mean, now, if you want to talk about two polar opposites, this is a new map based on newer photography, quality-based map. Every parcel has its dimensions. Every parcel has its full map and lot number that is also the Massachusetts statewide identification number. Everyone has an acre. We've got wetlands identified. We've got all the roads are well named so they can easily be read. We've got driveway surfaces for all common driveways, because a lot of times you want to get to a property and you just look at the tax map and say, well, I can't tell how you'd get there. In Carlisle, we didn't do it for every driveway, but we did it for these common driveways. They have this legal requirement for if you have this common driveway, it has to have a legal easement, and so they want to depict the driveway surfaces and the easements. So we put those all on the map, you know, so you can see this is how you get into this guy. You'd think you might use this little skinny stretch over here, but you don't. But anyway, As you move into modern mapping and you have the advantage of new aerial photography, you can see things like how do you get there. You can line the things up over the aerial photography. But that's where you are, this is where we want to be. But it's not just the cartography of making a pretty map. It's bringing us into more modern technology. I'm going to hand this, I guess I'll just slide that down and take a look. So, what we're doing these days is when we make a map, we start out with what looks like just map data here. Right? That's the same thing you're looking at on that printed map. These are the same parcels, same text, same everything. Well, once we get this built, any of the subcomponents of this, the parcel lines, the road lines, the text, can be moved to other platforms. These are also maps where everything built on this map has digital integrity. In other words, if we export the parcels out of here to another platform, which I'll show you in a second, I'll show you how we put one of our towns onto Google Earth, we bring with us a link to the tax data. So this is the software that I use, and that's not that important because I could use any number of different softwares. But what I want to show you is that this doesn't exist as a paper print. This exists as the whole town and all the data for the town in this software, and then I can export it from this software to other softwares for different uses. So this happens to be the town of Carlisle, but because I haven't got them exported out, I'm just working on them now, I'm going to move to a different town, the town of Poland, Maine, to show you what we would do if we wanted to leave this digital mapping software into something a little more real-world user-friendly. But before I do that, I just want to show you, this is the whole town of Carlisle. This is that map. This is a one map sheet like you're seeing there. Basically, this is like a view port that views off to this base map, and all this stuff is located in real-world coordinates. Now, I don't put the aerial photos up as a backdrop on this because it takes a ton of resources and slows everything down. Most of the time I use aerial photos though. If I'm doing quick lookup things, I use Google Earth. So this is a Google Earth that any one of you would have on your own laptop, your desktop. And these are towns that we map in. And that's the town of Poland, town of New Gloucester. Now I didn't load all the ones we have, but what we did was we made that same sort of base that you saw here, which I put all this data in to then create your tax maps. Then I did the layouts and make the nice prints. Well, I take just the parcel lines. And if you zoom in here, all these parcel lines right here, I take all of those and I export them out in what's called a shapefile. But I don't just export them, I also include data with them. So now as we zoom in on the town of Poland here, we can go into this neighborhood and take a look as you get in. Now Poland doesn't have very good aerial photography, by the way. These aren't as crisp as what you're going to see in Boothbay. But what I do is I link data to these. So now any person who has any interest in the town of Boothbay, or in this case the town of Poland, wants to know who's where are the buildings, where are the property lines, what are they assessed for, who owns it. I have that all linked, exported out, they put it on their website, you go on the website, you download it, every single person in town and out of town, every realtor can have access to this. Once we build it, it's ready for dissemination. Another thing that we do is we generate maps in PDF format. That map that I showed you, that Carlisle map, every town that I do maps for, I produce a paper set of maps with all that detail on it. So that's the in-house map. That replaces what we already have. It's just a much better version of it. We also generate PDF images. Those get put on the website and they're easy to email around. People can download them because not everybody wants to do Google Earth. Sometimes you want to read the detail that's on a tax map. You probably noticed that on Google Earth, we don't have a ton of detail here. This is really just the tax information. I'm not going to be able to put every piece of text on here. If you tried to do that on Google Earth would just slow to a crawl. One of the things that I will be able to do on Google Earth that I haven't done here with Poland is I'll be able to take your zoning, put it in a format that we can use it on Google Earth. Because once we get the base map done and we put the zoning on top of it, much like they did here, we just need to make it available in more than one platform. This is a paper print. They had it in software that was appropriate at the time. That kind of got old by now and didn't get maintained, but we're going to do it again, newer software, not only produce a paper print, not only produce a PDF image of a paper print, there's a zoning map for the town of Meredith, New Hampshire, but I also plan to set it up so that it can be put onto Google Earth, so you'd be able to have both your parcel lines and your zoning. Now, this is really helpful because all those people coming in for building permits and they want to do a layout, and we say, well, we got to see a plot plan of your parcel. And they're like, well, you know, how do I do that? And then we say, we want to see your locations of your buildings. Well, now how they do that is they're going to go to the website, they're going to download this shapefile, they're going to bring it into Google Earth, they're going to zoom into what they want, which is their property, and they're going to send it to their printer. And then when they send it to their printer, we're going to see their buildings. Now keep in mind, this photo set here is a leaf-on photo set. That's what Google Earth is putting out. But this is a leaf-off photo set. One of the great things about Google Earth is they offer multiple photo sets. Right now, the photos that we're going to use for the town of Boothbay don't exist. They're going to do them this spring and make them available this fall, and I would imagine very shortly thereafter Google Earth will have them up. So right now you go to Boothbay, you're not going to see particularly quality photos. You do the same thing in November and it's going to be a different world. They're going to have leaf-off photos, high resolution, so you're going to be able to zoom in on your property. By then, you know, well, it won't be then, it'll be a little after this. We will have redone the tax parcels so they're coincident with these new photos and added all the other data that creates a tax map like that. So the project is to take the advantage of the new photos, build the base parcel definition on top of those photos, bring in all the other data that we, by the way, some of which has just been lost. Like if you see that map in front of you, that the current property tax map for the town of Boothbay, well, if you looked at the older ones, the old ink on Mylars that are on the desk over there, they have more text on them, they have acreages, they have right-of-ways, they have all sorts of stuff that just never got brought over to this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to build the base on the new aerial photographs to get good geospatial accuracy. We're going to take the data off those old maps, all the missing dimension text, all that stuff that you see on that Carlisle map that isn't on this map, bring it in so we have it moving forward. Because it probably should have been brought forward already. Why it wasn't, I don't know. Might have been money, might have been technology, but it wasn't brought forward. We're going to bring that forward, and then we're going to take that and try to produce user-friendly forms of it. The PDF images, the KML file for Google Earth, and I just did this today and I thought it was kind of fun. I think where I want to go with this eventually, once we get this stuff built, it's not very difficult to change it from platform to platform. I'm running Google Earth with this exact same database for the town of Poland on my phone. As I go around town, I can touch a parcel, and I'm not going to do it because you won't be able to see it, but if I touch the parcel, the same data pops up. Well, there it is. That's the same data that you saw when I touched this parcel. So imagine if you're the code officer, and you have your zoning, all your tax maps, everything's on your phone, you're standing on a parcel with a taxpayer, you just call it up. Now, quite honestly, you don't have 4G yet, and until you do, it's probably not going to be the greatest service, but you can see where it's going. That's not a project for today, that's a project for tomorrow, but the technology's there. We're ready to step into it. But in order to do it, you have to start with moving your tax maps over into superimposed off quality photos. That's coming. Bring the data over with them, we're going to do that, and then make products that people can use from that. One of the things that I wanted to show you is this map here. This is a map of town of Meredith. And you can't see it from where you are because these are made to be on a desk in front of you. But what we did was we took the same base map that was used for their zoning map that you saw the PDF of, except we identified every road by category. And then, of course, these are color-coded over here, too. So town roads are one color, state roads are another color. That's a tremendously convenient map for people who, work in the town. The highway guys want to know that. And I make a copy of this that's, 3 feet tall and 6 feet wide for the guys in the highway department in Meredith. They just have it there, and it shows people what's a town road, how are they maintained. And we did that through the whole town. Once you get this digital, those add-on value products can come along later. Like, we're not going to do that out of the box because it's a bit of a research project and we don't need it for tax maps. But once we have that base done, later we can go in and just start categorizing our roads. This one up to this point is town plowed. We just come up with a color coordinated, make a map, throw it on your website. If people want to know what roads are town roads, what roads are state roads, what roads get plowed. Whether or not we'd ever go in the town of Boothbay to the point of doing these driveway easements, like these things up here, probably not, but we might choose to. You know, you've got a lot of properties that it's not that easy to see how you get there. You know, but once you get the base map so it fits over the photos and you got quality photos, stuff like that becomes possible. Should we identify driveways? So the idea tonight was to give you an idea of what is this mapping project. Well, one, why do we need it, and two, what are we going to do? So trying to keep it as short as possible. Any questions? Sure.
Mike? A couple of questions on dynamics of it. Assuming we go through a process like this happens in town, most of our districts are very, very stagnant. They're not going to change. We do have one district that is subject to change. So how dynamic would it be a year from now to add parcels, take parcels and add parcels and produce a new zoning map?
The idea, well, very dynamic, and here's why. These parcels should be edited every year with the tax changes. Like every year as the assessor, I get new subdivisions, I get splits. Those get updated on the tax maps. Because I build the zoning map directly on top of my street map and my, you know, these parcels here are the current Meredith parcels. It's all built in the same layers on the same project. So if you said, hey Mike, I need a new zoning map printed out that shows these new lots, they would automatically be there because I would have done the updates to the tax maps that year. And it's off the same basic project. So one output would be a tax map sheet. Another output would be a new version of the zoning map. So it would be as dynamic as often as we updated the tax maps, which is currently about once a year, could be twice a year. That other stuff would be updated. The street map gets updated with the changes to, like if you put a new road in because of a subdivision, that goes on the tax maps. Well, it also gets displayed on that street map because the street map is from the same base as the tax maps.
Next question. Looking at our zoning map right now, and then looking at the legends on them, Sherry, they suck. I spent a little bit of time today, not because of your presentation, but another issue, looking at the online zoning maps that we have. The legends and the colors on the map, they really don't match very well, and it's hard to say. What I was looking for was to identify by color the general residential areas, and it took a little bit of zooming in, zooming out, and whatnot to do it. And it shouldn't. The legend should be clear enough. Are you able to develop a good relationship between the legends and the color codes that they're going to match when the zoning map is printed out in a larger format?
Without being too bold, one of the things that we at O'Donnell Associates do best is cartographic layout. Just take a good look at that Carlisle map and then take a good look at the one you're currently using, and I think that answers your question. Our maps tend to be attractive maps that can be read. Now the one thing that may be part of your problem, not your problem, but the problem that you're talking about, is once you start going with PDF images, the colors are pretty well controlled by your monitor. So, in defense of the people who've gone before me, it's possible that what you're looking at isn't so much a cartography problem as it is a display problem with monitors. Now, one of the things to try is to try opening that same map on a different computer and seeing if the colors look better.
I did. I opened it up on my high-speed Apple that's
and the colors
with graphic colors, and then I also opened it up on my wife's PC, and they both.
So, if you look at that one, that one, those colors match pretty well. You can tell the difference between this green and this yellow, and this is a projection of a PDF. So we're dealing with two screens here. So my products tend to be clear, easy to understand, and attractive. Yeah, and I have every intention to try, the maps I make for Boothbay, I want to meet the standards that I make for other towns.
A suggestion for the selectmen, if you decide to go ahead and do this, a very, very large map that'd be hung in this room for planning board use, for your use and whatnot, should be an add-on for what's done, so that it's something that's easily referenced by the planning board, the appeals board, the selectmen if needed, residents coming in for different meetings, so something to consider.
Well, and I'll mention that once there's a couple of products. One is the digital base. Once we get a digital base made, it becomes a lot easier to make output products like printed maps. You want a zoning map that's half the town, so it can be a much bigger scale? No problem, because we already have the data. All we have to do is change these layouts here to show a different portion of it. My printing capabilities are, I can print 36 inches on my long axis. So that means I can print stuff that's this turned on its edge tall and as long as it is proportional. That's a pretty big map. That's the kind of map you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's the kind of map where you can really do something with it. You can see specific lots and get a reasonable scale. Once we move, well, that actually could probably be done with this if we had this in-house. We could, but see, we don't have that in-house and they don't maintain that project anymore. But that type of stuff, what an appropriate output product is, a bigger map, a clearer map, a small section, that's all really small potatoes once you get the base built. That's a great advantage of a digital world. You can reformat your output relatively easily. So that's something that if I do this for a couple of fire departments, I print maps that are 3 feet tall and 6 feet wide, and I put them on the wall so the guy can turn around in his chair and not have to get up and see stuff. I did for the town of Greenland, New Hampshire. We printed a map that was 6 feet wide and 7 feet tall. We just printed two 36-inch sections. And they put it literally was as big as those two windows all the way to the floor, and they put it on a wall as soon as you walked in the town office. And you couldn't, Greenland's not that big a town. It made individual parcels this big. So one other thing that we didn't talk about, and that isn't part of the project, but it's going to be available as you move forward, is because Google Earth is getting better and better all the time, and these new photos are going to show up on it, building footprints are not something I recommend we build, but you can see them. They become, it's a tremendous tool for planning and land use. All of a sudden you can see the buildings, and that makes a big difference. There's so many meetings where you're talking about stuff, and if you get that TV monitor and you've got a PC here, and Google Earth is easy to do, and you've got some of these overlays, you got it, boom, someone's talking about a parcel. Had I known the town better, when those guys were talking about their property, I wanted to go to Google, type in the address, and have it pop up.
I thought of that, said, can't you bring it up?
I could have brought it up, and I just didn't do it because I didn't know where they were. I haven't been here that long, I don't know where the old fire station is, and I didn't want to interrupt them because it seemed like...
With Google Earth, all you need is an address.
So how often does...
I didn't have their address though.
Well, the town office address, because they're across the street, you can move it around.
Right, but I didn't know that either.
How often does Google Earth update their photos?
When they want to. So we don't control that.
So if you give out a building permit to build a 60 by 80 barn, it could be 5 years before that shows up on there though.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of photos.
To be clear, my house was built in 2006 and just showed up on Google 4 months ago.
Yeah.
So.
But keep in mind, one of the things that's changing is that the frequency with which things are being flown, because the price is coming down.
Right.
What we're about to see is the county, they've been pushing their way through the state. They did York and Cumberland County last year, and they're now doing Lincoln and a few other the counties nearby. If the Maine Office of GIS and the Geo Library Board have anything to do with this, and the companies that fly these, because it's good business for them, they're going to be doing this as regularly as they can. There's some southern Maine communities that are signing on right now to regular flights. Now, I don't know whether we need that or not, and again, this is an example of what you can do once you have the base done. Whether Google Earth has enough photos in the future, whether we do it locally, you know, quite honestly, we're going to get a pretty good photo set here. I'm not going to be recommending you spend any money on photos in the near future because that'll run a while. But you're right, it's not intended to pick up every change in a, you know, as it happens. But it is a tremendous baseline, and it's happening now, and this is a good time to take advantage of it. And another thing, we're in a bit of a backlog in terms of what has been maintained. It's not like the current stuff is all up to date. You know, we've got a few years back where the tax maps, even as they haven't been done. So we're doing two things here. One, we're bringing it into the modern technology, and two, we're just bringing it up to date, just a basic revision work. You know, bringing in the parcels that have been done in the last 4 years and putting them on the maps, which, by the way, is a responsibility that we have as a town. You know, every year the collector is required to have up-to-date tax maps to perfect the tax liens. So that's another thing that hasn't really been done like it could have been, and we're going to fix that right now. We're not only going to build this new map set, but we're going to come up with our annual maintenance program.
What's your timeline for making the map set?
The photos will be available around October. And I'll probably make the maps through the winter and try to deliver them around April 1st, 2014.
At a cost of?
The maps themselves are going to be $27,000, but there's an $8,000 charge included to do 4 years worth of tax map revisions. So that total of about $35,000.
We're backlogged 4 years.
You have 2012, which is the year that just occurred.
Yeah.
And I didn't update the maps in 2012 because those maps haven't been updated for the 3 prior years. So, and then by the time we're done this, we'll have the 2013. So actually it'll be a 5-year revision period that we're doing for the $8,000. 5 years worth of revisions. Bring us right up to 2014.
Mike?
So.
Would or could road width right-of-ways be included in the base?
Yeah, good question. Everything that we have access to, we can do. But I'm not committing to researching them all and determining them. We will probably use most probable road right-of-way widths. And that is editable later, but if anybody wants to sit down with a set of maps and share their historic knowledge, that would be helpful. But I typically identify the roads by their most probable right-of-way width. And another thing that I won't be doing is, you know how we had a lot of discussion about DOT. You know how right-of-ways, they tend to be, you know, you might have a 66-foot wide right-of-way, but in certain areas it's a little skinnier because of something that happened 50 years ago. If that's brought to my attention and I have something that shows me what it is, I can incorporate it in the maps. But I don't do a ton of research on that. I don't ignore the obvious. If I see something that, like a subdivision plan that has something, I adopt it. But I don't do a comprehensive review of all your roads. And if you had a road commissioner who knew all that, or just a highway guy with an incredible knowledge of right-of-ways, we could make good use of that knowledge. But for me to go out and sort of do a road network research project for you, that's not part of the mapping project.
The only reason I bring that up is I'm thinking on from a planning board standpoint, a lot of times it would be very easy to reference a map, at least with state highways on it.
I don't just draw them all the same. I try to establish what the road is, what its most probable right-of-way is. And they're standardized typically. You have 50-foot roads, 66-foot roads, 100-foot roads, 33-foot roads sometimes. But we typically try to determine what the probable right-of-way width is. We try to determine, we start by building road center lines, because you can see the roads on the photos well. We set road center lines, and then we try to buffer out from them, and then edit as needed based on subdivision plans and tax parcel information.
From a planning board perspective, you would have all the Google tools that are on Google Earth too. So think about what you have. You have rulers and stuff like that, so you can actually physically, during a planning board meeting, actually measure the edge of the road to whatever property you're talking about. So you'll have more information, but Mike's right. I mean, there's some reasonable amount of information that we can get in a certain amount of time, but some of these roads are very historic, and it's going to be hard.
And realistically, how many of our roads are actually built down the center of the right-of-way anyway?
And
like
how many
Industrial Park Road is all over the place.
And how many of those will we know? Can we actually research and find real solid information?
You'd be surprised. More roads than not are within their right-of-way. You know, I've been doing this a long time. I've done a lot of maps, and there's always the examples where it's not the case. But more roads than not are in the right-of-way. That doesn't mean you don't have a lot that aren't, but if you were looking proportionally, it's got to be a tremendously high proportion of roads that are within their legal right-of-way. Now, driveways are different, but roads tend to be more or less in the right-of-way. Even when they are shifted, they're not typically shifted completely out of their right-of-way. Because the state roads won't be, because the state has to reestablish their right-of-way if they move their road. So
one of the things
town
that
roads might be.
we were discussing just as everybody was coming in is they date stamp all of the flyovers too. So we're going to have a 2013 picture here shortly. So it's a pretty good solid baseline. So when the planning board is looking at something in 2023 from now, and maybe they didn't fly over in those 10 years, they'll know in 2013 what the property looked like. They'll have records of all those permitted changes to the, so they'll have a lot more information right at their fingertips.
So can you go, I mean, I'm not real familiar with Google Earth. Can you go back and look at old pictures, say?
Watch. You go to whatever they publish. So there's 98. Bad resolution, right? Kind of fuzzy. There's 2003. Good resolution, leaf off, kind of clean. Then you've got 06. That's one of those National Agricultural Inventory Project, real low resolution. It's designed to measure acres of farmland. Not very useful for us right here. 07, that's an odd photo set. That wouldn't do us much good. 2010's pretty crisp.
Yeah.
That's nice and clean, but it's leaf on, which isn't great. 2011, fuzzy, another National Agricultural Inventory Project, most likely. The feds fly stuff all the time, but they fly it at a level that isn't particularly useful to us. And this is the 2012 stuff. This is Poland again. It's not Boothbay, but so. And keep in mind, Jim is talking about using Google Earth as a platform, and I love Google Earth as a platform because it's available to everybody. It's easy to do. The service it takes to host data like this and have it zoom in and out like this is tremendous. However, for local uses, we may build projects in, say, Arc Explorer, which is a free piece of software that allows you to bring in other layers that you might have trouble managing on Google Earth. Problem with that is you're going to deal with the photos, and you have to bring your photos in resident to your system on your server or connect to some server out of house. For serious users like a planning board, that might be an option. For casual users like people who are just worried about their own, where they're going to put their barn, that isn't an option. But it is for the in-house municipal users.
Google Earth's all free, even if you're using it commercially like we would be.
Yep. You could upgrade to Google Earth Pro and get a lot more tools and pay some money, but you also, the idea here is to just, if you're going to make a map set like this, and you're going to put some time and effort into it and make it quality, it's important to extend the users beyond whoever walks in the office and pokes their nose in the assessing office. That's not enough anymore, especially for the cost of this. It's got to be something that we can reach out to more people with. And then if you're going to do that, you have to ask yourself, how are we going to do it? Well, how many people in Boothbay have GIS software on their machine at home? Very few. How many have Google Earth? Anyone who wants it. So that's why I love Google Earth. It's a platform that engages other people in what we're doing. It just expands the user group. And I think you'll find that once you start doing it, lots more people will use it than you think. I've had some towns where we've done it and they put it on their website and then they, just due to not paying attention, just stop putting it out there. You find out pretty fast. People call up, hey, where's that download file? I want to see that. Realtors in particular like it. It's very convenient for them. The attached tax data is really convenient. They pop this on their desktop. They stop using maps, actually, and they just use this.
And think about the customer that wants information from the town. The customer could be a resident that wants to know property information here, or it could be somebody that wants to buy into property here. All the information they want to see is right there. That is readily available to them online. They can actually probably get it quicker going online than they could call in. So you're going to take off some of the burden of administration trying to funnel these people to information they could get with a click. That's the direction where services are going.
Where's our neighbors? Where are the guys that just left?
Down.
It's a little bit south.
1036 and 1038 Wisconsin.
Right there in front of you.
These guys right here? That's where we're going to have that sidewalk?
That's right.
Right across in front of the business.
Yep, so you can see their point, that if you were to look at the size of that car and turn that the other way, you guys all know this anyway because you live here, but you can see how during that type of discussion, now next thing we're going to have the road right-of-way will be there. And of course that would have made your point. When the right-of-way is over here somewhere, and then the parcel lines would be there, and to give you an idea of what's in the back, and that's all going to be something you can do as soon as you get your little TV here. You're going to be able to do it at your meetings. And it will be as up to date as the most recent tax maps, because that will be maintained. The project is to build the maps, bring this technology forward, but then we're going to keep maintaining them over the time. We're not going to let this happen again, because this is kind of shelf right now.
That takes me to my next question. It's $27,000 to build it, $8,000 to take care of the 4-year backlog of incomplete tax maps. What is the yearly cost going forward after that?
About the same as it is for your regular tax map revisions. But we haven't done your tax map revision, so I don't really want to put a price on that. The 2,000, if let's say you called it 4 years of back tax maps, and we charge $8,000 for that, most of our clients, the annual tax map revisions are anywhere from $2,500 to $4,000, depending on how much work we have. I don't know what your annual load is because I actually haven't done it yet.
Looking at the future, none of us will be here. Say the town no longer uses your company's services. Is the software proprietary?
No. This is, well, let me put it this way. It's not proprietary. I build this whole thing in AutoCAD Map 3D. AutoCAD is one of the most common digital drafting softwares. Map 3D is a sub-license of regular AutoCAD. They have a bunch of them. They have AutoCAD for architects, AutoCAD for engineers. This is AutoCAD for mappers. There's two big guns in the world right now. One is ESRI, Esri, and they have a suite of ArcView, Arc Editor, Arc Info software suite. That's what this stuff is done in. I choose AutoCAD Map because I like it allows me to be a little more particular with my output. But they're industry standards. So if I were to build it all in this, and by the way, all of it's your data. I actually produce a CD every year for all my clients and just send them everything I have. And the reason I do that is, one, it's an out-of-house backup. My building burns down tomorrow, all my mapping clients have their data on CD. Two, you don't want to see me coming here anymore, you just take that CD, you hand it to some other mapping company or engineering company, and they'll probably say, well, we do it a little differently, we'd like to modify it a little bit, but you don't have to start from scratch. This is adoptable. I put no controls on it, no securities. Someone could literally, if they had the software, because they would have to have the software, but you could buy that, or already own it if you're in the business. You put in the CD, open it up, and you're right back to where we left off. Nothing proprietary. I make it as easy as possible for the next guy to take over. I will add one caveat to that though. In the industry, more people use the Esri software than the AutoCAD software. So there's just more people doing it. And part of that's because Esri was really effective at getting out and selling their wares. And we were in AutoCAD 15 years ago. We already had a pretty good step there, and so we kept with them. I do work in Esri, but it's my second favorite. So I work in AutoCAD because it's my favorite, and I have them both. So other shops, like these guys, they only work in Esri. They don't do the AutoCAD stuff. They started later than I did, and they never really got rolling with AutoCAD.
Say one of them drops off the face of the earth. Can one talk to the other, or would it need to be started all over again?
It would never need to be started all over again. The data itself, if you look at this as a really good example, See, that's really a layout, and that's going to produce a map. If you go back to that main screen, the model screen, all of this stuff here on this can be exported out in a format that can be brought into many different softwares. One, we did some of this stuff and stuck it in Google Earth, but we could have produced it in other forms to go into other softwares. What you lose is quite a bit of time and attention goes into getting the output just right, and as you mentioned, getting the colors just right, getting it to look just right, getting the text just right. If you abandon AutoCAD Map as your software and you move it into, say, Esri ArcView, it's going to take a little bit to get it to look just right. All the data can be moved over, but having it present exactly the way you want it, you might have to spend a little time doing that. It's not like rebuilding everything. The hard work here is to take the photos and draw all the lines over it. That's one big part of the hard work. The other hard work is gather all this text data and enter it, because you really have to enter it and place it if you want it to look right. You notice how that other map, you notice how there isn't any of that on this map? You want a map like that, you can do it pretty quick and pretty inexpensively. You want a map like this, think of how much work it takes to get all of that stuff in so you can read it, and see how these you can still read underneath them. It's a function of detail. Detail costs money, but once you do it, then you're only editing from that point forward. You have all that detail, and you can transport it from one platform to the next, so it's convenient. So no, there's nothing proprietary. This is not a, once you're in it, you're doomed if you want to change. There would be a little bit of conversion pain, but it wouldn't be a redo.
What did we budget for this, Jim?
We budgeted exactly, we've split the payments up into 2 fiscal years, and we budgeted that first payment for fiscal year, so it's already built into the budget. We kind of got off this topic, but think also from a planning perspective and an ordinance interpretation perspective, is that map right there next to Mike is the official zoning ordinance map of the town of Boothbay. Well, when you're trying to figure out where zones start and stop, it's pretty simple when they start and stop on Back River or Route 27.
Right.
But when you get into instances where it stops on a lot, well, in the industrial park it's pretty easy because we designed the zone based on lots. But in this example, did we design the zone based on lots? Probably not. So where does it start and where does it stop is a really good question, and it's at the interpretation of whoever's reading the map, whoever the reviewing authority is. We can get to the level of detail so we know exactly where that line starts and stops, even if it goes to midway through a lot. We can add that level of detail in there.
Would it make sense to have them start and stop at all lots?
No, but as lots break up or get combined, you might combine a lot and it still exists in 2 different zones.
Why would you want to split a lot into 2 major zoning lots?
I'm not saying that we would, I'm saying that it could happen.
Any zone that's determined by a distance?
Yeah, I'm not talking the sub zones. I'm talking the major zones.
Oh.
I understand shoreland and all that. That's based on
250
distance,
feet is
but I'm looking at the major zones. Why would you want to have that split?
If you're in C1 and you buy and you're right on the border and you buy property in C2 and merge them for some aspect that might be planned and determined, you would be in two zones. You don't, bless you, Sherry. You don't automatically go to one zone to the other. You bought property in 2 zones, but they might be
The zone stays where it is.
Now that could theoretically happen in the future. Where that line is, we would have to make an interpretation now. In the future, it could be pinpoint accurate.
Alex?
I'm sold on the idea that that's our law, and it's not easy to read, and it's not really disseminable to the public. I mean, a lot of people have no idea what a zoning map is. It'd be a good idea to get that to everybody in this town, so they can constantly I'm having to tell people, you know, go to your map, find out what zone you're in, find out where they're like, oh, my lot number is such and such. I'm like, that doesn't help me. What zone are you in? Like, this is what you're allowed to do in that zone. They have no idea. And if that's the law and it's not up to date, I think we ought to get there.
Well, I don't think this is too bad in that they put May 7, 2012 on it. but I'm not sure it has all the parcels up to 2012, so I'm a little perplexed by that.
It doesn't.
Yeah, it can't have all the parcels because they weren't plotted. So, anyway, it's a good point that, you know, it should be up to date in the real sense. Like every parcel that has been occurred between that, up to May 7th, 2012 ought to be on that map.
The reality of it is, I don't think.
But in the zone can be entered in the text block too, so that a resident or anybody can go in and pull that up and not only see the property, the tax on it, who owns it, what zone it's in too. And then that means, that also tells them what parts of the zoning code applies to them.
Yeah, I don't think we put zoning in these here, but we could have.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple entry though. There's got to be enough text fields to do.
Oh yeah. Oh, actually, this is just whatever data source I take, I link to it, and then it shows whatever we want it to show. Matter of fact, that's another thing. Lots of towns, when I show them this, they say, well, what about data we don't want to show? Well, that gets a little trickier now. Data fields you don't want to show, I can just eliminate. Individual pieces within the whole that you don't want to show becomes a lot harder to do. I can do it, it just takes time. You know, if so-and-so, if the Maine Special Olympics say, look, we just don't want to show up on that. We don't want you publishing that. One of the things that we have had requests for is sheriffs asking to not be in these databases. They don't want people being able to go figure out where they live and go ID them. So we have edited them out. The more that we do, the harder it is to keep track of everything, but it's doable. But getting one field out, like let's say we just never put in the last year's taxes here, the last year's assessment, well, that's easy. That's town-wide. I just don't put it in and it's never there. Editing out individual pieces is tougher and it's hard to keep track of it. Now, I can't promise that I would make sure I got it right every year because we've got quite a bit of it now and it's overwhelming.
Well, I have two questions. One is editing. It's very editable. I understand this. I've been to a bunch of GIS classes, so I understand the software and whatnot. But is there any talk about doing any in-house editing? If a lot, or is this going to be totally contracted with your outfit to do this?
Well, we're currently your assessors, so we do the map updates anyway.
Okay.
So the idea would be to have it be a continuation of our assessing role.
And secondly, one of the first things you started off when you're scrolling across and everybody's names, lot, map and lot comes up. Names is an issue for me, and maybe it's not for anybody else. I suspect freedom of access says we're allowed to give it anyway. So this is maybe a moot point, but could we just negate the names? You could still do map, lot, and everything else, but I don't think necessarily. I don't personally care. You can scroll over my house and have Dale Harmon on 19 Chesbrough Lane. I don't care. But there are people out there that really do not want to have somebody run a mouse across Boothbay and find out exactly, pinpoint where they're.
Any field you don't want published doesn't get published. That is a local decision. I do what you say, and it's changeable. Let's say you get some flack for having something and it's just, you just don't want to deal with it. You just stop doing it. So that is controlled. We control that completely.
So how long, I mean, if you did this just like this, and all of a sudden we said to you, hey, we've gotten a lot of flack about putting names on properties. Is it a matter of a keystroke and it's done?
More than a keystroke, but it's not more than 10 minutes. Maybe 15 minutes. If you told me you wanted to get rid of one of those fields, yeah, I would have to open it up in the base software that I built it in. I would go in and kill that field. I would then have to regenerate my KML file and then send it back to you. So probably 15 minutes.
And this is information.
No, I mean the digital side of this. I mean, you sold me anyway. I mean, like I said, I've been to a bunch of GIS classes. The selling of this is easy, but there are certain aspects of it we got to certainly customize it for our needs.
Oh yeah, and
I do agree with you on the names. I know there was some reports on the news of some areas that were doing this sort of thing and having it all on the net. And for law enforcement, it was quite a hot topic.
Well, I think the thieves would love it.
Well, I know someone's going to Florida in the winter time. And here's
building layout and everything. I mean,
don't go to the registry of deeds.
Decisions to make, and the good news is it's 100% controlled locally. You decide what you want. I don't have any. We can have no data attached. We could have one thing that says boo if you want, and that's it. You can choose that as you would, and we can change. You start out with something, find out later you want more, we add it. Find out later you want less, take it away. Because this is about what you guys as a town want to put out and make available to people.
Roll your mouse over it. You have just received a John O'Donnell virus. That would be a good thing.
Good business strategy, that one.
But you gotta think about this information is accessible. I mean, this is public information.
I understand that, but I think I'd rather force somebody to come into the town office and request that information through the desk than just scroll over it with a mouse click at their house.
They can still do that.
Ownership is really one of those thresholds where lots of communities choose not to do it.
Yeah, I just, that's my own personal, I just don't think names should be that accessible.
Alex had mentioned going to the registry of deeds. Yes, if you go to the registry of deeds, you can get all that information. If you come to the town office, you can get all that information. But certain circumstances, you should have to come into the office to get that information.
Well, I mean, you can go to the registry of deeds online, because that's what I do. I take the tax map, I find out the lot number, and I go over here to the registry of deeds online, I look up who owns it.
Well, we publish
it's just one step. I mean,
we publish all of this in the annual report. Sure.
That also.
Right. It is one step, but it does separate those who are going to put some effort into mastering the technology from those who would just stumble over it.
Right, and that's what I'm worried about, is the guy that just kind of bumps, oh, he lives there, well, I know he's gone for the winter.
Yeah. Well, again, keep in mind that the whole Google Earth part of this, that's one product that comes from the base map effort. It may be a product in the end that you only distribute to town people. You know, all that can be decided over time. It does, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. So I'm showing you that what we could be doing with this, you guys choose what you will do with this.
What do you need from us, Jim?
Right.
I'm going to make the motion that we do it. We enter in the contract with John O'Donnell for the price of $35,000.
Second.
That's what you need, correct?
That's what I need.
What year contract?
I didn't hear what you asked.
You said a contract for so many years, but
No, I said enter into the contract with John E. O'Donnell and Associates.
Okay, I thought you said a...
For $35,000, and that $35,000 is $27,000 to build the database and $8,000 to update the old assessing maps.
2010, 11, 12, and 13.
Could you guys add to that motion to allow me to sign? Because I have a comment
Sure.
here, but...
Allow Jim to sign, yes. Authorize Jim to sign. That's a better term.
Still second.
Any other comments? All those in favor? Motion passed.
Thank you, guys. We'll give Mike a couple minutes to clean up and before we head on. I know it's getting late, but Mike doesn't have to stay here for the entire meeting.
Next on the agenda, approve the minutes of the previous meetings from February 25th, 2013 and March 11th, 2013.
There is some changes.
I got Steve's change. It's on February 25th, number 9, public comment. I changed it to read, Robbie Ham from BRAS expressed interest in the town property, formerly the animal hospital, which just seemed just a little bit more fluid there. Any other changes?
How did you read that again? I'm sorry.
February 25th,
Yep.
number 9, Robbie Ham, BRAS, expressed interest in the town property, formerly the animal hospital.
Is that the 25th or the 11th?
But I don't...
It didn't sound right to me.
I don't know if...
It wasn't
He
clear.
didn't... I don't think he was expressing interest in the town property so much as if he was looking at selling the property, that he would be open to...
He was interested in a portion of it for...
Right.
Well, right.
Just interest in it, the way it was worded in the minutes.
Or maybe willing to include a portion of the property that we own.
Right.
When I say we, I mean the ambulance. I'm wearing two hats. Sorry.
We've since recovered that conversation, and that's why we just wanted to make sure it represented that he had interest in it. It was...
I will make the motion to approve the March 11th and the March 25th meeting with one correction.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of the February 25th and March 11th meetings with the corrections. All those in favor? Motion passes. Reports.
Yeah, public comment.
First report on the St. Andrews Task Force. The last meeting was canceled due to the snowstorm. I think that some of the volunteers that have been working with the task force are trying to schedule a meeting for tomorrow night. But once again, we have to touch base with all the governing members of the task force. So it might be an unofficial task force meeting in which they're trying to get together. They want to put together their minds and talk about what they saw at the meeting last Wednesday that Lincoln County Healthcare had. So then the only thing to update on is last Wednesday, Lincoln County Healthcare and Maine Health had a kind of public meeting in which they had a question and answer. I wanted to give a little bit of credit to Lincoln County Health and Maine Health. That was their first public meeting with a back and forth exchange. I think it went pretty well. If they have more of those, then people will start coming around, at least on some of the topics. Chuck, you're the chairman of the St. Andrews Task Force. Anything to add?
It was a nice presentation that they gave us. Some of the information was the same information that they had shared with the task force at some of our meetings. I was disappointed in the fact that they are not going to entertain the idea of getting a license to allow an ambulance to go to the clinic during the hours of operation. I think that would help the peninsula a lot, dealing with the transition from the emergency room to an urgent care clinic. They say that the care is going to be the same that we currently get in the emergency room, so why not let the ambulance service utilize that as well to help save on their costs a little bit. I do realize that some emergencies have to go off the peninsula. That's currently done now. I don't see why we can't keep it. So I was extremely disappointed when they said that that idea was off the table.
The wearing a different hat for a second. The reasoning behind that is, I mean, we talk about cost shifting all the time, you know, like what the state wants to do to shift it to a local level. The main driver behind that, I believe, is Medicare will not pay to go to a urgent care center. So therefore, if we took somebody, say if we picked you up for a twisted ankle on the side of the road, you would be responsible for that bill at that time. Medicare, your insurance won't cover it. So therefore, that big ambulance bill all of a sudden shifts from your insurance to you. So I won't say that that was Lincoln County Healthcare's driver, but I mean, that's got to be factored in as well. Whereas if we go to any hospital, any actual ER, it will pay for it.
No, I did know that, Steve. I did do some research on the Medicare and Medicaid government websites and was aware of that. My biggest reason for the push to allow the ambulances was it'd be a much shorter turnaround time than if you guys had to take every patient that you put into the back of the bus off the peninsula.
I agree.
All set on the task force?
Yeah.
Jim, regarding the meeting tomorrow night, I think there's some selective calling going on with task force members. I had a call early this evening about that also, and I just asked Chuck if there was a meeting earlier, and he said nope.
No, there isn't a scheduled meeting as of right now. It's a formal meeting of the task force. No, there is not. I've already talked to Smith. He's not available. I'm not available. Tonight was the time I was going to talk to Chuck. So if we were going to pull one off, it would be pretty miraculous.
I'm working tomorrow night.
But if the volunteers, and I met with a couple of volunteers, and I said if they want to meet, as long as they know that there's not going to be any formal decisions made at that meeting. It could be a meeting of the minds. That's, you know, and we embrace the volunteers meeting. We've held several of their meetings here at various times.
Jim?
Yes, sir.
If you're not going to be here and I'm not going to be here, could they hold it at the fire station?
Yeah, certainly. We can. I mean, this space will be open.
Oh, I understand that, but usually the building's locked. With the fire station, they could just go upstairs.
Yep. Wherever they want to meet. I mean, we'll make.
Just try to make it easy for them.
Yep. We'll make this available. We can make the fire department available. The comprehensive planning committee is I like to add this as a reoccurring report. Still meeting every 2 weeks. They're meeting in the opposite Monday of the selectmen meetings currently. I put in your packets the transportation, and it's the first draft of the transportation section, and there's still pieces to be added to it. But I want to keep showing the selectmen the level of work that Planning Decisions is doing, they're taking raw data and they're kind of creating what could be, a direction. And so if you look at the transportation section that they put together, there's a lot of illustrations that are really helpful to people for future planning of the town. I won't get into a ton of detail on it, but I wanted to make sure that I brought up that's why I put it in your packet. I'm going to try to consistently put in a new piece of information that Planning Decisions has developed every single time we meet, so that when we come to a plan, it won't be your first time reading through all of the sections. But also it's a first draft, as we pointed out during the Comprehensive Planning Committee meeting, is that there was typos in here, there's information that wasn't correct, so we still have a lot of that work to do. Chuck, you're also the chairman of the Comprehensive Planning Committee. Anything to add?
Planning Decisions has helped us a lot. They've brought a new energy to the already energized folks that are on the comp plan. The Education Committee's already done a boatload of work. As you can see from the information that Jim gave you, there's already been a lot put together, and we're going through it. The subcommittees are all working on specific items now, and things are progressing well.
Next under reports, Grid Solar, who we're working with the solar exchange. You explained to you what we're going to do with solar arrays here in the town. They just gave us a call late on Friday, and that's why you haven't heard it until now. We literally put this in the packet at the very last second. They need to generate a little bit more power on the peninsula, just a little bit more, to meet that quota that they're trying to meet. So they want to stage a few backup generators throughout the peninsula to feed into the grid. And they were looking for property locations that they could lease to stage those generators. They thought of the town because we have property that's already being used in a fashion that's kind of industrial and wouldn't really affect the property too much. And I told them that ideal locations would be the fire department and the public works garage, where you could stage a trailer pretty easily, and it wouldn't really do anything to the neighborhood, wouldn't do anything to the property. So what they gave us was just a brief synopsis of what they want to do in that email that's in your packet. They want to lease property for about $100 a month for each lot that they use. They want to take up a space that's probably a 10 by 25, and they want to get into a multi-year lease. Also, the information and specifications on the generators that would be there is in your packets. What I'm trying to do tonight is just gauge interest. A multi-year lease would have to go to town meeting, and a one-year lease the selectmen could grant now. But right now I'm testing the appetite. Is this something we're interested in, or we want to tell Grid Solar go find somebody else? Because I'm sure they could find somebody else that's willing to get paid to stage a trailer in their property.
How often are they looking to run it?
They said about 4 to 10 hours a year. So it's going to be hardly ever on. It really is there for those peak moments during the summer when the grid can't keep up with the demand. They kick it on, it feeds power back into the grid, and alleviates that need for the utility expansion out here.
I wonder, I mean, if you could rig it so when we lose power, if the public works, I know they don't have generator, they have the capability, but they don't have one to run the fuel pumps and the garage and the fire station. I think they are already have their own generator, but if we could rig it so they could get the energy from that if we lost power, it would benefit us and them, because we'd be using it most likely in the wintertime when they're not looking to run it anyways. I wonder if we could incorporate that in somehow to get something out of it. Right.
The depot already has a backup generator.
Yeah, but it's a portable to run the pumps is all it is. Whereas this would power that whole facility, the doors, anything they need to do in the garage during a snowstorm.
We thought about that in the early stages. They really want they really want this to be like one location that works on its own, so that they can turn it on depending on what the power needs of the grid are. But if we did have a generator, we would have been in line to get in one of these programs where they actually pay us to turn on our generator.
But I mean, if they want to be able to turn it on, I don't see the harm in us wanting to turn it on once or twice a year if we need it.
So maybe the lease arrangement having us be able to use it as a generation.
Just, I mean, because most likely we're gonna need it in the wintertime.
Yeah.
When they don't need to create power, they're looking for peak times in the summertime. So, I mean, it would make sense to be able to use it if it's sitting there, and actually, it's better for it to use it than just have it setting.
Right.
I mean, if we could work out some sort of an arrangement.
It's a mobile trailer though. Will it be sitting there, or is it something they collect in the fall and they put back in the spring?
But as you can see, I think that they want to have it here for quite a long time. They want to have the ability, after they demonstrate that this grid solar project works, that it becomes a fixture there. So, I mean, they're looking for some place to be able to lease for up to 10 years. I don't think that has any impact on our 10-year plan. It could on some businesses, and I know that they tried to negotiate with a couple of other businesses. It didn't work out because of some kind of other issues.
Personally, I think, personally, I think there's an interest there, but I think $100 a month is cheap if that's all we're giving them is space. Whereas if we can work on an arrangement that we may be able to get power off in an emergency, then I think it would actually benefit the town more.
I think the way it's hooked into the grid, I don't think it would be an easy task to switch it over to just run our public
I don't know.
works.
I mean, that would be a great question to ask.
I mean, that would be the question.
It's a good question.
Yeah, just unplug it, plug it into the ground.
Switch.
Right. It would be.
Square the email switches now where you can, I mean, it's all automatic.
Is that the limitation of our interest in this too? I mean,
I can only speak for myself.
I mean, I would ask the question if it could be switched over to.
Certainly. I just
Just
want
a-
It'd be a lot sweeter sell for all of us if we
Yeah.
reap a little rewards out of it. I can see.
If in the winter it could power the public
Spin my
works
head
grid.
here a little bit from their perspective, who handles maintenance on this? You know, it becomes, well, you're using it more than we are, you might as well do the maintenance on this thing from now on. So I can see how this could get sketchy,
But on the other side of that, I mean, we're not in the business to rent out town land.
I understand.
Unless we're gonna get something from it. I mean, we're not going to get anything other than $100.
That's a stipend. That's not.
Right. I mean, whereas at least if we know, I mean, to our taxpayers, if we say, well, geez, we agreed to this because right now we have no way of producing power unless we want to buy an on-demand generator for the public works, which would be big money.
Right.
It would make sense to be able to negotiate it, and I think that would be a small negotiating factor with them, I would think. It's like you say, it's a matter of a switch.
Yeah, they've got their own engineers and electricians. I'm sure we can barter with that. I just want to
Yeah.
know what's our level
Yeah.
of interest if that's not on the table.
How big is this thing? They need 10 kW. Is this thing 100 kW, 500
this
kW,
is
a million?
500 kW.
500.
Yeah, that's gonna be a little more than the town office will ever need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe, I mean,
Well, if there was one at the fire station, one at the
Right.
public works, those would be the two buildings, if there was a big power outage on the
emergency.
peninsula.
How many are they looking
yeah,
for? Do
in
we know?
emergency, yeah.
Just
2 or 3.
Yeah.
2 to
And,
3?
we brought up 2 properties that we thought were plausible. We didn't bring up these
That,
properties.
and what do you figure, what, $100 a month, $1,200 a year, times 2, just $2,400 a year.
Which is a token, but I think that we need to get power
But
from
if
it in
they,
an
if they were
emergency.
available in emergency to power the
Yeah.
public works and the fire station,
And it's a great PR move for them, because
Yeah, sure it would.
they're publishing, I mean, they're putting power to our emergency services in the town of Boothbay.
Either way, we have to come back to you guys because at least we'd have to go through the Board of Selectmen. I just want to know what our interest is if that's not on the table. Are we still interested in?
How large are these trailers?
10 foot by 25 foot?
This says the setback requirements are 10-foot minimum on 3 sides and 25-foot minimum on 1 side for the transformer, but it doesn't say the size of the trailer.
look on the specs, they got the specs for the trailer.
And there was a,
Well, the container size is 20 feet long.
right, ISO cube container.
72 decibel. So she's loud.
Diesel.
And I think that's one of the.
It looks like the trailer is about the same size as the 20-foot box on the picture. So it's gonna be 25 foot probably.
Yeah, I would say so.
I think it's worth getting more information from.
Sure. But, you know, they obviously don't want to create a lease agreement if we're not going to be interested in it, so they're wanting to gauge our interest.
I think that, speaking for myself again, but I think that if they're gonna willing to provide us power for them, I think it would be a slam dunk.
Okay.
Personally speaking.
If nothing else, $2,400 a year, I'm looking at both sites now, that pays for the updates in our tax mapping every year and then a little something too.
Right.
You said 25.
I mean, although it's a stipend, it's something to put on property that wouldn't normally,
I understand.
well, depends on how long they sign the
We said
lease.
most towns are 25.
But I mean, it's already property that's
For-
the fire station, the public works.
Right.
Our annual updates are gonna be about 20. When he's estimating that $2,500, he's in the ballpark.
Just curious.
That's what we paid in my previous town, about the same amount of lots, about the same amount of updates.
Mike?
If they're looking for a third location, I'd be interested in the industrial park.
Okay.
Frank?
With the noise of a 500 kW generator around the fire station, with the residences in back of there, be it become an issue, so that might be something to consider also.
But I think in an emergency, I think the answer to that would be no.
Probably not, but if they're using it for peak time also,
Right.
you know,
That
they-
could be on July.
He was talking, it only running about 10 hours a year.
yeah, I
Might
realize.
not ever run. I mean, it depends on.
Yeah,
And that's daytime, like 2 to 6 or something.
Well, it's gotta have some sort of cycle, they gotta run around, they're not just gonna.
Right, I was gonna say-
It's gonna
Yeah.
start. and
Yeah,
shut.
ours that we have at the ambulance
Once a
station
month.
runs.
It's gotta start once a week and run to temperature and shut off.
Yeah, that's enough to annoy the right person.
Yeah, we
I love it.
got 3 of them at the water district, and they run every week for an hour.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Why diesel and not propane? I wonder.
I don't know.
I mean, propane runs quieter.
Probably got them cheap coming back from the war.
Probably surplus. The engines.
All right, I'll flush that out with Grid Solar. It came in at the 11th hour, and it seemed like free money, and we ought to entertain it. 2009 CDBG business grant. Obviously, it's been in the paper because we made sure that that email that I sent to you guys also went to the register. But our 2009 CDBG grant that we had with Biovation we're off the hook. Essentially, we sat down with CDBG and Biovation, and after a little bit of discussion, we found some issues that we could rectify, which put us in compliance.
Cool. Great job, man.
So we also met, I had lunch today with Karim from Biovation. And you know, one of the things that we did was also while getting in compliance with this grant, is that we forged a better relationship with Biovation. A really interesting company that is about to just blow up. They've got so many things going on right now, and it sounds really promising. Definitely a business that we want to maintain a good relationship with in this town. And that's the official letter from the DECD, so we'll save that.
So problem solved.
Yeah, well, it took a little bit of work, but problem solved.
It works.
The tax sale bid, you'll see next week in the first week of April in the Boothbay Register and all the 3 area newspapers that will start advertising the tax sale bid that's in your packets. The advertisement is already in your packets, and that's how it will appear. Those are all of the properties that will be sold in June if things don't change in regards to the property owners coming in and trying to rectify their tax situation. That doesn't mean that those property owners can't come in at any point in time in that next month and try to figure things out. Last year, at this point in time, I think we had about 8 properties, and we ended up going, 1 to tax sale, which we ended up selling to Mr. Lewis. So we may find ways around these, but this is the last ditch effort to figure out solutions to these properties.
How many of these properties that are listed, how many of the owners are working with you right now?
Of these properties?
How many owners what?
Are working.
1, but we missed a call today from one of the interest owners, so it could be possibly 2. I expect a couple of these properties to be figured out, but sometimes it really takes it takes the Hail Mary pass at the very end to try to figure them out.
I am a little curious, Jim. The second one listed, it says an interest in the acreage.
Yes.
I'm assuming that there's more than one party that owns that property?
Yeah, that particular property, the deed is to 3 different individuals, so they all own 1/3 share. And we apparently tax billed 1/3 share. So we only own the interest, the third interest in that property. And whether we can actually even sell it, we'll find out. But for 75 acres, it's plausible.
So we've only tax acquired 25 acres? I mean...
No, 1/3 interest
yeah, third,
in the
We've
75.
only tax acquired 1/3 of the interest in that property. And we still have our lawyer that's out there trying to figure out what we're gonna do with this. But in the meantime, we're gonna advertise that we're gonna sell it.
Frank?
2 things. Is that a normal way to do things, take a partial interest like that? Or is that something that was done years ago just to...
Not something we're gonna administratively do going forward.
Right, probably a good idea not to. The only reason I'm bringing this up is they were just talking about this at the Harbor's meeting. And you probably know of this, talking about Hail Marys, but Bill Hamlin was talking about state law to do with property tax relief for people over the age of 65. And I don't know all the details on it, but over the age of 65, if they can't pay their tax, not that they don't want to pay their tax, but if they can't pay their property tax, the state has a program that allows them to defer that tax until a major event happens. Either they die and the property is sold, or the property is sold. They were talking about that because they brought the same thing up at the meeting. Did you know anything about that?
It sounds like a proposed law
It's something that's
that they're talking in Augusta, but I hadn't heard of it being...
They were talking at this meeting like it was in and implemented. So I don't know if it's something you want to look into. It's a state getting involved with deferring property tax for 65 or older who cannot afford it.
I'm vaguely familiar with the program. I wouldn't want to comment on it.
Well, I'm just, and again, I'm just bringing up what they just talked about tonight, so it might be worth taking a look at.
And it's still on the property owner to go through some verification process.
Obviously, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you can't just come in and say, I can't afford to come in. I'm sure you have to.
And with these 9 properties, we'd like to see every single one of them come in.
Oh, of course.
And even if they're going to say, good luck selling it.
Yeah.
We'd like some.
You're not in the real estate business.
Right. So we sent out letters just recently to all the property owners saying that they have 30 days to come in and try to figure it out. And truthfully, if they're watching us on Channel 7, they've got longer than 30 days because we're not actually going to do the tax sale until June. We just want to make sure that window is as big as possible. And then we also sent out letters to the property abutters. Although our ordinance doesn't specify, I do think that the property abutters that are involved in tax sales should have at least the knowledge that the property is going to go up for tax sale. Because those are the people that are going to have the most interest in what happens to that property. There's 2 awards and weirs that should be in your boxes. I just want to make sure I pointed them out, that they're in your box and scheduled for the future. I think one of them, the public hearing is going to be a little bit late in the day.
Six p.m.
Yeah, one of them's at 6 p.m. Now, the reason why we did that is we're trying to get these public hearings done in a reasonable amount of time so they don't have to wait for permitting process. So we pretty much go to Pete and say, can you do it in, is he flexible with these public hearing times? So petition and ordinance changes. As far as petitions, we know there's 2 petitions being circulated right now. David Stimson has made it pretty clear he's circulating a petition, and Judy Dorr is circulating a petition. Don't have any petitions in my possession. They would need 188 signatures to bring that petition to you. I told you guys would look up to see what the last gubernatorial count was. So it was 1,872, I think, voters. Yeah, quite a bit. So they need 188 signatures. If I don't have those, I don't see any reason why to wait on those because we're kind of meeting the deadline for annual town meeting warrant. Additionally, the planning board has their ordinance changes done, but we don't have that reviewed by Sally yet. So the language that we use for a question is kind of up in the air right now. You know, ideally I would want to wait to include that in the annual town meeting warrant, but we don't have it right now. So I guess this is the point where I plead to the selectmen. We could find out from Sally that it may take 2 or 3 days to process those questions and have them available in the next 2 or 3 days. Or we could find out it's going to take a little bit longer. So it's up to you guys, but my recommendation is that we just bite the bullet and expect to have a special town meeting pretty early in next year to accept some of those, or vote on some of those ordinance changes. I wouldn't want to hold up the rest of our annual town meeting warrant, which is pretty important at this point in time.
We already knew, though, we were going to have a special town meeting for all the ordinance changes that you folks were working on, correct? Later on.
Some of the ordinance.
Right.
Yeah, but some of that stuff might go, you know, until May or June before we could do get all that stuff. There's some real tough things to be worked on, sign ordinances and things like that. So there are some parts of of the warrant changes that we've come through, particularly the ones on the industrial park, that I know all of the industrial park owners and landowners in a potential lot coming into the industrial park that would be very disappointed if we had to push that off until early next year. I don't know if it's possible to put pressure on Sally to get it done, or if the selectmen may want to accept the language that Sally submits for it and include it in there. But I know the planning board would really like to see that stuff in on this warrant.
It takes a lot less time to prepare for a special town meeting than it does an annual town meeting. Annual town meeting, we have referendums and stuff like that, so that's why we have to publish this ballot so much in advance. So we could realistically have a special town meeting before the end of the fiscal year this year. It would just be, we'd have to explain to the public why you're having a special town meeting right after your annual town meeting.
As long as it follows very, very closely, I think it would be okay. I wouldn't want to see much more than a 5 or 6 week delay on that, just for the sake of the industrial park ordinances. Plus, last Wednesday we went through an awful lot of corrections and changes and just the simple stuff. Plus, there's a couple of other things in there that are really good. So I'd say if we have to do a special town meeting, a sense of urgency with it.
What's the difference in the requirements for a special town meeting versus the annual?
Because there's no I guess if you were doing a special town meeting by referendum, it would be the same. But if you're doing a special town meeting open floor style, which we normally do, I mean, you just have to meet basic posting, which is like 14 days. I mean, you could literally call a special town meeting in a matter of weeks. But an annual town meeting takes months.
And it would probably be held here rather than someplace else?
Yes.
Now I got a better idea. How long before Sally gets us that information?
I don't know right now. That's where
the
I'm
problem.
at.
Push her.
Well, I mean, she just got handed ordinance change material right now, and to make sure that is constructed in a legal fashion, you're going to do it hastily. And I'd just rather not make any more changes to ordinance that are done hastily and do it wrong. So, I mean, and what's the impetus about protecting the annual town meeting? Well, this is a strict deadline. We're by law have to meet the first Monday in May. Now, we could leave questions off. We could go and ask one question at annual town meeting and still pull off the letter of the law. But if we don't have our budgetary stuff voted on at annual town meeting, that's going to delay our tax commitment. Our tax commitment is going to delay our revenues. Our revenues, well, if you understand, it all falls down.
Yeah, the reason I asked my question is what's to say we can't hold a special town meeting immediately following the regular town meeting?
We have meetings scheduled, I think, for April 3rd and April 10th for public review on these. If we do that, right now I think they're being advertised as if they're going to go on the warrant. Do we need to make some changes on the way that's being advertised?
I haven't seen the advertisement yet.
And I haven't either, other than the fact I know we talked about it, and Dan was gonna take care of it, and we were looking at the 3rd and the 10th for public hearings.
Right.
I know there was talk, I don't know if it was here when you were meeting or the planning board meeting once, about how many times a year that changes could be made to that. Did that question ever get answered?
Yeah, we researched it. We couldn't find it in a current form of the zoning ordinance. It must have been an old version.
Could we have a special town meeting after the town meeting?
The same day?
Yeah.
Same day.
I'd advise against it. I mean, honestly.
Well, what's the difference in asking all of the questions that we're gonna ask only in 2 different forums the same night? If Sally isn't ready and we need to approve the special town meeting warrant, and we can do it all the same night, because we want to ask these questions anyway and they're already on this warrant, and there's a 2-week requirement, and we're still out here talking about what's going on, let's take care of it all the same night. If we got to wait a couple of weeks for Sally to get the comments, and the planning board is going to have their public hearings on, what did you say, the 3rd and 10th, that still gives us 3 weeks before we're looking at the annual town meeting. Take care of it all the same night.
I would advise against it. I mean, we're putting together the legal framework of probably the most important vote that the town has. Why would we want to throw doubt into that by structuring it a little funny, so that, you know, it creates an opportunity to invalidate a vote? I mean, it's theoretically possible.
I'm a little more optimistic than you are on that, Jim. I think that the townspeople would give us the extra time to make sure that what we're presenting to them is what we want to present to them. And if we can do it all in one meeting, they'd be more than happy to take care of it in one meeting rather than have to come out a second night to deal with it.
So Jim, can we, could we set the warrant for the annual town meeting, but have the zoning changes be done by written ballot the same day? Because we've set the warrant, and then you just have your zoning, you know what I mean? You vote by secret ballot during the day to change for the zoning changes. Or is that all considered one?
Yeah. You see this warrant that you have.
Right.
So in that warrant, there is a section that is your referendum.
Right. Okay.
And then there's the rest of the open town meeting. So you're calling that entire day into focus in that one piece of paper.
I can see where it'd be a little strange ending a meeting and then starting a special town meeting, but the upside of that is you've got the turnout there.
Right,
people are there.
You got more people and people don't want discussion.
Right.
They won't want to do just a, come in and vote for a change.
I mean, if we were back in the old days of having 75, 80, 100 warrants articles, then I would be dead set against it because you'd be there all night. But now we're not to that point. I mean, what is there, 18, 20 articles now?
Yeah, and that includes the articles on.
That's a long day. I mean, that's a long voting day.
It is, but yet, I mean, we used to do it. We'd get out of there 11, 12 o'clock at night because we did 100 articles.
Well, it wouldn't be any longer than if those articles were part of the warrant.
Yeah, but it's structurally a little odd, and that's what I'm worried about.
I guess the question would be is to ask Sally if we
Yeah,
can
has
do
she
that
intimated that this is gonna be a squeeze for her to?
Oh, we don't know how long it's gonna take because she just got the information today.
And we have to finalize the warrant tonight.
Right. Ideally, I want you guys to finalize the warrant tonight so that we can meet all the posting requirements to have annual town meeting on time. Now, there's a few days of slush there. I mean,
Well, this is
just
what
a few days.
This is what I mean. So
we set the warrant. You ask Sally if we can get away with doing what Chucky's recommended, and if we do, we can set that at our next meeting.
But I think if we include them on this warrant, I don't think that we'd be able to hold the special town meeting that night.
No. We set this warrant. We
Yes.
set this warrant tonight, and at the next meeting, if we find out that we can do what you're proposing and we have everything from Sally by then we can set another warrant for special town meeting same night.
And the process would still be going. The planning board holds their public hearings as they're planning on anyway, and we don't have to hold a special town meeting in the middle of the summer.
Well, I mean, you're not really. You could theoretically have a special town meeting before then, because the posting times are so less restrictive for a special town meeting. So, I mean, you have an entire calendar of dates that you could book for a special town meeting. You're not restricted to summer. I mean,
Yeah, but we all know that if we hold a special town meeting, the turnout that we've got in this room right now is usually the turnout we get for a special town meeting. And I want to get the biggest bang for the buck.
Yeah, you get the special interest groups, and that's it.
Right, that's all, I say it, I agree with everybody else, you're just gonna
If
get
you
the
gotta-
people that
yeah,
are
if you
concerned
gotta
about the
spec a
ordinances, and
little-
that's it.
A bunch of people that don't want
Just like when
something.
you guys had that special town meeting to buy that property down there. How many people did you have there that night? You guys was the one that voted for it, and probably 4 or 5 other people. There's only 3 people voted against it. That's all it was there.
You
A
should have
special
been
town
there.
meeting. I
You
was
should have been
there.
there.
I was there. You know I was there. So, and it's just special interest groups that showed up that night. We know who it was too.
What's the last date that we could set this one on, Jim? I mean, I'm not pushing you to it exactly.
yeah, I'm not. I would have to do some counting, but I
So
think
we
you have
would
to do it
have-
by Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Yeah.
I still think, can't
Oh,
we?
you mean day
we can
after
still set
tomorrow?
this one.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, we can still set the warrant and then look at, because it's still
For,
gonna be
for the
same amount of
annual
questions.
town meeting, we can set that warrant tonight. For the special town meeting, we could do that next meeting if we had to,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, you could do it. Yeah, I mean, you could do it 2 weeks prior to the meeting.
Right, so we don't, I mean, the tension's off as long as we set the annual
Meeting
town
tonight.
meeting tonight.
Yeah.
And you can determine the date of a special town meeting at your next
Right.
meeting, whether it'll be after the regular town meeting or if it
Or
would
a
be
different night altogether.
better to have it at another night. But I think this, as long as there's a sense of urgency on a special town meeting, not pushing it off months, it'll probably work okay with the direction the planning board is going.
Well, I feel as though we've kind of pressured the planning board into making these changes. And it would be a little inappropriate just to say, well, we'll do it anytime.
Yeah, but we're kind of being held at a hostage by Sally by not having the right language for it.
I
As Jim
understand.
says, if we don't have the right language for it, it's liable to need another change, which would be more of an embarrassment
Exactly, yeah.
than delaying it.
Yeah,
So
there's no way I'd ever approve putting something on the warrant without actually seeing what it says.
And we don't have anything. I mean, today's the date we set 5 months ago to finalize the warrant, and we don't have anything. So that's why I'm saying we're at deadline. I mean,
So
I'm
we
sure
just-
the newspaper has a deadline, but I'm sure there's an internal deadline that they know that they got a little bit more room if they have to make an edit. We have a little bit more room, one that we didn't advertise 5 months ago. But that room is days. It's not.
I think we just set the warrant and you look in and see if we can put together a special town meeting, hopefully the same night. We'll know by next meeting.
Yeah.
It's that easy.
And you're gonna get, let me wave that flag. You guys can do whatever you want, but we put a lot of effort into making sure that the annual town meeting is legally set up in a way that's unchallengeable.
Well,
Let's
that's why
just
we
not
need-
take that armor off.
That's why you need to ask Sally that question.
Right. And I know I can already hear her chirping in my ear. That's how good a
I just-
lawyer she is to say, why would you do that?
Well, the point is, you're gonna have to
You tell me
turn
that
out and you're gonna
because she
save
didn't
money.
give us the reviews in time.
She just got them today.
She just got them.
Did she? I was told she got them last Wednesday.
I think she's been on vacation.
They've been in her office longer than today, I understand.
Right. Her first day back from vacation was today. She told us 2 weeks before she went on vacation that she would be on vacation. I have a hard time putting it on Sally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's got to take vacation.
It doesn't
And somebody
matter.
has to
She's
take it.
getting well paid.
I'll do it.
It doesn't matter. We know what we need to do. That's the main thing.
And if Sally wants to know what my thought process is, I'm more than willing to talk to her. She knows that.
Any other comments on petitions, ordinance changes? Okay. Department head reports. Well, first thing is obviously we've reoriented the meeting room. I just wanted to see what you guys thought. And then now I'll get into the discussion that I haven't had that Mike let slip. The reason why we went with this is Dan and I have been going through lots of meetings in which we're trying to present budgets to you. We're trying to present zoning maps. And the way we were set up before didn't allow us to present it to the audience and to the board at the same time because the room is narrower this way than it is this way. So we just got curious one day and started shuffling chairs around, and it's when we started talking about audio video. In this way, if we were to present here, then I can present that to the public and to the board at the same time, and it's pretty crystal clear. We even went so far to brainstorm as if we had you know, a flat screen TV that we put here, it's as simple as I could plug into my computer and show you exactly what I'm looking at. So a lot of times when we're talking about information in your packet, you are the only guys that have that packet, well, you and Ryan are the only ones that have that information packet. So a lot of times our conversation starts to seem a little odd if you're sitting over here because you don't know what we're looking at. That's as simple now as we could actually just project it right here. So, you know, the resolution that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, we could actually put up here. If we get to a sentence that you guys are struggling on, we can put that sentence as big as we wanted to show people what we're discussing. We're not committed to this setup, but I just wanted to try it out on you guys. And if it resonates just a little bit, we'll try it next meeting. We'll see if it grows on us. And we'll, you know, but sometimes these things are kind of historic and you don't want to change.
I think it's great. Douglas has the microphone in front of him now. So
the only thing that I have concern on, and I think it was Dale that brought it up earlier, the seating. It appears that we lost some seats. Not that we need them most of the time because this is the biggest audience we've had in a long time, but if we do have a large number of folks show up, and we usually use the library as well, what's the loss of seating capacity?
These are the same amount of seats that we had out here before. They're just oriented differently. I think we could easily set up 2 rows of seating with it over there.
And in this direction, you could open that and people could go that way.
Yeah, we've used that for an overflow crowd before. I just thought that it looked like less seats here.
No. It looks smaller on TV.
It's just wider.
I hope I look smaller on TV, Frank.
Do you think we could use their big meeting room? The Harbor would let us use there?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm tight with that. Let me just.
Well, no, I'd rather not have you ask.
Mike raised an interesting point. If you were doing a presentation up here, it'd be very easy to turn the chairs at an angle too, if it was going to be a long presentation. So to make it even better for the audience.
But you guys will have to admit that, I mean, Mike O'Donnell's presentation here was a little hard because we were trying to project over there, but it was because we had all these maps. And you guys have seen in the planning board that Dan's been projecting right here.
Yeah.
So now he's literally looking at a computer screen projecting over his back shoulder. It's really easy for us to show you guys what we're talking about in that instance. Mike's was a little bit clunky. But what we're trying to do is fully display what we're talking about so that there's complete transparency in these meetings, that the public can watch from that angle and see everything that's going on. Because if we're talking about this resolution document that these guys can't see, they're having an even harder time to figure out what we're talking about on the outside.
Well, I mean, this table doesn't need to be way out there like that.
No, it get pushed out a little bit.
But so I mean, there's more room than it shows here. So.
What you say is an alien, non-resident audience member. I applaud this arrangement. I like it. So.
Well, next meeting we're going to make the alien non-resident sit out behind the curtain.
Like at your town meeting.
Right.
No, you can sit up on the balcony.
I mean, you've already extended our meeting 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So that you could buy the TV to put up here.
Let's say, you know, we need a flat screen. Right?
Yeah. What a great.
Don't send him to Augusta to get it. He'll probably go off the road coming home.
Excuse me? I got my new one coming. It's in.
All right, we're going next. As for department head meeting, we had our department head meeting today. We're doing our second round of safety audits. We're about to do public works here shortly. Again, for the second time, we'll see how well we corrected the things that we found in our first safety audit. Once again, making our departments much safer. We started, you'll see in the warrants, we started our business membership with the YMCA now. So now all of the employees of the town have YMCA memberships in which the town is paying for a portion of. What we were able to do was cut down the cost of the YMCA for our employees down to about 50-60% based on whether they have a family or a single, and the way we're going to support that was with that
Generators.
Jeez.
Can we censor him?
Don't make me use the gavel, Frank.
The way we're going to continue that program is that we're getting some grant funding for it. So it's not exactly the town paying with tax dollars that entire other half. It's going to make healthier employees. I think it's a good program. Public Works just put a bunch of floats overboard in the Murray Hill area. I'm sorry, I can't read mine. Oh, they're getting back on roadside cutting, but this last storm kind of threw a curveball into that. Code Enforcement Office, there's a Board of Appeals meeting this Thursday. They've invited some of the planning board. Planning board members will attend that joint meeting between the officers of the planning board and the Board of Appeals, and that went pretty well. And we're going to try to spin that into a training session in the future. We haven't nailed that down because Sally's been on vacation, which we'll counsel her on. You know, a couple of things that we're just interested in the department head meeting is that there's a use permit for Keniston Hill coming up. One of the commercial properties in town that hasn't been used since I've been here. Going to be back out there on the market. And there was some activity at the Colburn House, and then if you read the paper, Dave's AG now has somebody in there. So a couple of properties that have been vacant for a little while starting to get back into the swing. Hopefully that means something. We don't know.
There's a new update on the Boothbay Country Club and this week's register, at least it's online, that Mr. Coulombe has found a new managing partner for him.
Right.
Not such, I think, right?
Yeah, it opens in May.
May 22nd, I think is what they're shooting for.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard some stuff about the Course Pro, supposed to be pretty good. So,
yeah, we're going to sink a lot of money into it, which is great.
Good. The business office sent out reminder notices just recently. We got 50 people came in and ended up paying their taxes due to reminder notices out of about 480. So still some regular notice. If you're behind in your taxes, come in, tell the town office, and we'll try to figure out what we can do, or at least give you some advice. The town report is being worked on right now. We'll add in the pictures that we took today and start getting some rough drafts of what that looks like. The Code Enforcement Office is also going to try to put together an informational meeting with Boothbay Region Water District on what phosphorus measures would be in to replace what we have for right now our setbacks on the Water Reservoir Protection District. So I don't really know a lot about that, but it's more of of measuring what kind of pollutants you're putting into the water reservoir rather than just designating an area that is a setback for some uses. So Code Enforcement is going to put that on with the Water District, and hopefully that'll educate planners as well as people about what we could do as far as phosphorus standards. That's it.
All right, question. Old business, revenue sharing resolution.
In your information packets, as demonstrated on the flat screen TV that Frank has bought us. This is a draft resolution according to the conversation that we had with Mr. Jakimovich at the last meeting. Once again, I just wordsmithed this. Any changes, let me know. I stole a lot of the language. So if you see somebody other town's name in there, I missed that.
I'll make a motion we adopt the resolution.
Okay, I'll second that.
You didn't make a lot of sense, nonsense to you.
Motion's made and seconded to adopt the resolution for the Board of Selectmen about revenue sharing. Questions? Being none, all those in favor? Motion
I
passes.
just want to point out that if this was at like 7:10, you'd have read that over.
I just read it.
No, I mean, what?
Oh, no. Internal control policies.
We gave you this policy is pretty thick at the last meeting. It probably took a little while to read through it. I know you guys read it in the last 2 weeks. As you were reading, you probably recognize that a lot of it is common sense. But once again, when you're talking about internal controls, it's good to put these things in writing. It definitely makes the manager's job easier because when we're getting back to basics, this is basics. This is what our town fathers have said we live by, so this is what we live by. I actually missed something on the reports, so we'll have to go back.
So is this something that you're looking for us to?
I would like the Board of Selectmen to adopt it. We can always go back, it's a policy. We can always change it. But essentially, we're gonna make some pretty wholesale changes. Some things that you've already seen with the way we present warrants. But the payroll change that we're gonna do on the 1st of April, I'd like to see supported by this policy. You know, a lot of these things we're gonna do anyway, but I do want to see policies support our actions.
The one question I had was on the section, the function of the Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
Isn't our role pretty much spelled out by state law?
Yeah, and I don't see where this is contradictory to that.
I'd just like to see some note in there of that as well.
So a reference to the statute?
Yes, please.
Basically, some of the primary responsibilities of selectmen include but not limited to, and then put the title or whatever it is. That would be easy enough to.
Yeah.
Make a motion that we adopt the internal control policies with the stated change that Chuck requested.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt the internal control policies and procedures for the town of Boothbay with the one addition that I requested. Questions? All those in favor? Motion passes. Annual town meeting warrant.
As presented. The one thing that I would ask you to focus on, we discussed it, and we've actually changed the wording to represent it. Article 20. So we've worded that very, very open-ended. And actually, I even took the Board of Selectmen's recommendation because I didn't think you wanted to recommend, you know, I didn't think you wanted to make any recommendations yet.
But you'll have a number at town meeting.
Correct.
Yeah.
So essentially, Article 20 is worded to say, to see what sum the town will vote to appropriate from estimated revenues. And hopefully, by May 6th, we'll know what number we'd like that to be. But as of right now, you wouldn't like the number that I would recommend. It's just not a very good number. Much like Eileen was talking about, we'd like to see some things fall differently, but essentially, when you're coming up with this estimated revenue number, you want to be as conservative as possible. You want to make sure that you generate more revenues than what you put down in this number. And as of right now, if I was going to give you a conservative number, it would be so low that we wouldn't like it come tax commitment time. So I'd kind of like to see if some things change between now and May 6th.
I'll make a motion to approve the town of Boothbay warrant for the town meeting, May 6, 2013.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the town of Boothbay warrant for the annual town meeting on May 6, 2013. Questions? Being none, all those in favor? Motion passes.
Is this the copy of
the legal size? I'd like to use as the actual copies.
We have no new business?
Can I add
Public?
Can I add one thing under new business?
Okay.
I just got today just got the resignation of one employee. Amber Jones has got an employment opportunity. She's going to leave us in about a month. Still trying to nail down what that date is. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to staff appropriately coming into our summer months, which are generally pretty busy. I don't want to act hastily and hire a full-time position immediately. I'd like to, since I've been here, I've gone to the Board of Selectmen and asked before we've done any hires. I don't think I'm legally required to, but I like the way that operates, especially if I'm going to do what I plan on doing. I would like to hire 2 part-timers immediately for a 6-month term, and then during that 6 months figure out what we're going to do long-term. The reason why is there are enough duties involved that I think bringing one person up to speed in a quick amount of time is going to be hard enough, especially with the amount of traffic that we get during the summer months.
She does a lot.
What's that?
Amber does a lot.
Yeah, she's
There's
doing
a lot of different jobs she does.
Like anybody in the office.
Yeah,
is
they all
100 jobs.
multitask.
So, and then also we need to think about that the other 2 people in that office have a tremendous amount of vacation time. We can't just ask them to postpone it because we're shuffling people. So within the realm of the budget, I'd like to hire 2 people for some part-time help until we figure out what we're going to do long-term.
Lori is capable of going over there if she has to, right?
She needs a lot of training. Lori's more than capable of doing anything we ask her to do. But as far as motor vehicle registrations, tax payments, it takes her a little while to get up to speed because she doesn't do it daily.
But it may not hurt to have her, at least have her know how to do it.
Yeah, but you're also talking at the same point in time where the code enforcement office gets the busiest. During the summer,
No, but in a pinch, I mean, I thought when we discussed hiring her to begin with, I mean, granted, she's gotten her code license since then, but we talked about cross-training the 2 positions. It just makes sense covering a lunch break or anything, if you find that slack spell, if you don't get someone hired before Amber gets done, you're gonna have that spell where, I mean, there could be potentially 1 person there.
Yep.
Just makes sense.
No, and I'm sure, actually I've had Lori come over there and pinch hit a few times and she picks it up quicker than I do. If anybody's been waited on at the window by me, they realize how painful that is.
It's awful.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And we have subs that we're going to bring up to speed as part of the process. We're going to bring in Sherry, and then we're going to try to touch base with people that have done that in the past for us, but also add in 2 part-timers, and then between all of it, I think we can manage through the summer months. But during that time frame, it gives us flexibility to figure out what we want to do staffing for the long run.
I applaud you for looking at the part-time solutions to give yourself some more flexibility. Now, Amber's working 35 to 40 hours.
It's complicated, but right now she's doing 40.
Okay. So I realize that in the beginning, the part-timers will need training, so it'll take more time. But in the long run, part-timers are cheaper than full-timers because they don't have the benefits of a full-timer. These folks would have to realize that these are just part-time jobs and they're not going to become full-time anytime in the near future.
Well, we would advertise them as such. But once again, like all part-time jobs, if you figure out you need a long-time fix, those are the first people you consider because you already know how well they do. So, yeah, it gives us tons of options.
It does. It gives you more flexibility in the office as far as scheduling as you need to. My only concern is, and I've been around the municipal game for a while now, it seems like every time we hire a part-timer, before too long they become full-timers, which end up costing us more.
Oh, you have me on the record right now that I don't want 4 full-time employees in the office. So,
I mean, there may come a time, I suppose, a year or 2, or 3 or 4 or 5, 10 even, down the road that one gets done and you say, geez, I'd like to make this one full-time.
Yeah.
I mean, you cross that bridge when you come to it, obviously, but
yep.
it's going to save us money in the
But you could see the shock value is if I immediately hire 2 part-timers and you're like, hey, we have a 4-person office now. That's what I'm trying to alleviate right now, is that we want to hire 2 part-timers, but it's just to create options moving forward.
Now, as far as part-time employees, I mean, they don't receive health insurance. Vacation and stuff, is that prorated or none?
We haven't had any part-time employees, except for when we had Ame in the past, and that was really only part-time for a little while. So I'd have to look back at what our personnel policy states. But essentially, yeah, we would be hiring part-timers because we wouldn't want to offer all the benefits of full-timers until we know we want to keep somebody as a full-time employee. I think it could be, I think there's a market out there for this kind of work that people may be interested. I think of the stay-at-home mom or dad that has kids about school age. Our office hours just happen to line up pretty nicely with that. So you could actually come in, do a job, cut back out, and I think we can put it together. Just need a little patience from the selectmen to figure it out.
One more thing in the new business. I hate to do it, but when we discussed having the meetings on Monday, Tuesday night, whatever, I preferably would like to revisit and then go to Tuesdays. That's just myself, whether anybody else wants to or not, that's just me. But Monday nights are going to be harder and harder for me. Right now I have to find coverage, like, you know, I had to leave early last Monday night. And when St. Andrews closes, to find someone to cover my shift while I'm here, it's going to be tougher because they're going out of town when you have a call.
Well, as we discussed at the last meeting, Tuesdays for me are like Mondays for you. So one of us would be in the same situation. I'd entertain Wednesdays, but Tuesdays, that's like earlier when Fran asked me about the task force meeting for tomorrow night. I'm closing at the store.
You do that every Tuesday night?
If I don't have the task force meeting. That's usually the night that I close.
I mean, is that twice a month, 2 times a month, 4 times a month? What is it?
I have to close 1 night a week at the store.
Huh?
I have to close 1 night a week at the store. That's my minimum.
Yeah. So
And usually it's Tuesday.
You can work it.
We juggle it around once in a great while, but not very
I know,
often.
but we can work the Tuesday, the meeting, either second or third and fourth, or 1 and 3. I mean, we can.
When the planning board meet?
The 3rd Wednesday of the month.
Right now, almost every Wednesday.
Yeah, lately every Wednesday.
Yeah, and it looks like it's going to be a lot of every Wednesday, right through summer.
I'm just afraid, you know, I mean, as it goes on, Monday nights are going to be more and more difficult for me to not have to leave. You know, I mean, just the reality of it is, I mean, I hate, St. Andrews is going to do what they're going to do, and there's nothing we can do about it.
First and third, or second and fourth.
Any Monday, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, it's hard for you.
Yes.
I'd love to see all the meetings in 1 week, so if I'm gone working on a week, hopefully it's not the same meeting week, or I can schedule around it, get more meetings. If I have a Tuesday meeting this week and a Wednesday meeting the next week, I got to put off going out of state for anything.
Well, I mean, I spoke very loud and clear. That was my logic behind this entire thing. Everything gets wrapped up in 1 week. You can do Boothbay Harbor, Boothbay, and Southport 1 week. But at the same token, I spoke very, very loudly last 2 weeks ago, and you know, we went where we went. So at this point in time, I don't want to be mute, but my feelings are still the same. But I'm not going to keep beating a dead horse.
My job prescribes that I'm here no matter when this is. So.
We don't care.
Yeah, I figured. Thank you. When's the TV come in?
Yeah.
Right now, when does the
A 40-inch
task force meet?
First and third Tuesdays.
And that's
wrapping up, which I'm sure my employer will be very happy about.
Right, and you know, we were talking, you're still talking about an executed date in June, right? I mean,
yeah. Right.
Yes.
So if we just replaced that meeting with ours, there wouldn't be a whole lot of different. You know what I mean? the first and third.
I think I'd want to still keep it on the second and the fourth though.
Okay.
You've got
Well, that's
those
some-
meetings too.
Yeah, but I mean, that, I don't have to find someone to cover for me. You know what I mean?
See, this is actually between you and Chuck. I'm neutral. It makes no difference to me. We just, when we
And I also
voted,
know, like-
when we voted last week, I weighed out who it was the most inconvenient for, so I went the way I went, but personally, it makes no difference to me whether it's the opposite Mondays or it's on a Tuesday. I miss probably 2 meetings a year, and that won't change.
I just know Martin spoke up last time and said that the first Monday,
Oh,
first
five
first Tuesday of the month.
Yeah, they have
Fine.
5 meetings.
That's why I offered the compromise of Wednesday. I mean, right now, comp plan meets the off Mondays of the selectmen. I've got the task force meeting, which should be wrapping up soon.
I don't know, what do you think about Wednesday? I mean, I don't,
So,
I'm indifferent to Wednesday. I never even thought about Wednesday, honestly.
If you guys took the opposite Wednesdays of the planning board meeting, I can't speak for the whole planning board, but I don't think we need to do workshops on the Wednesdays. Those could change to some other day.
Monday would be
Everybody's
open.
schedule.
Yeah, Mondays.
But if your
Mondays
goal
we-
was to have each of the 3 towns in the area on different nights, if you go Wednesdays and Southport
I'm
meets
step-
every Wednesday night,
Right, I'm
then
step-
you're
I'm stepping on
doing it the
Wednesday.
same time as Southport is.
Trust me, I was already going to vocalize that.
Unfortunately, while that would work in an ideal world, it doesn't work with our work schedules.
I know, I'm just pointing out if you were trying to do them all on different days, that,
You know, the benefit of not having a Monday meeting, I mean, obviously, I don't care. When you guys tell me to meet, we'll be here. But the benefit of not having a Monday meeting is you have lots of holidays that fall on Mondays, and we just postpone it till Tuesday.
Yeah.
And we've been pretty good at dealing with that since I've been here.
It's true, that happens
But it-
3-4 times a year.
It happens.
It's
That's
happened a
right.
lot this past,
That's
it's
right.
happened a lot.
Makes it more festive.
And Monday sucks.
Well,
What have you been smoking tonight?
if someone wants to go there, they haven't got a rush to come back either. But you know how I done it last time, so,
I still feel the same way I felt 2 weeks ago.
yeah, me too,
Nothing changed.
yeah.
Do you work every Tuesday night?
I do when I have the task force meeting.
So if we replace the selectmen's meeting with the task force meeting, what happens? That would be my question.
Then my employer has to work around me that much more. It's a little difficult when you go to set up your schedule and the boss goes, can you close Monday? No. Can you close Tuesday? No.
Buy the place. Just buy Hannaford to be on safe and say you don't spend.
Yeah.
That'd take a lot of money.
Looking for someone to buy.
That's
some
why I
land.
threw Wednesday out there. I realized that all 3 towns couldn't meet
I guess
right in a
several
row.
people in mind,
But
that could raise the kind of money.
unless
I'm
the
really
3 of
trying-
you have an issue with Wednesday night, Wednesday seems to work best into Stevie's schedule and mine.
There's one more day you're forgetting about, is a Thursday.
Oh, let's don't get late in the week.
No, we don't do Thursday.
Killing me.
Too close to the weekend?
Well, I don't want to sound disrespectful by any means, but I mean, I think that this meeting night is a lot bigger than me, or Steve, or Doug, or any of us. I think the whole point of the meeting night is it's for the benefit of the towns, or the benefit of the town with the community considered. I think that's what I've been trying to get at this whole time. And, you know, it just seems really kind of crazy to me that Tuesday night was acceptable for the task force, but not for the selectmen's meeting. I have a hard time with that.
No, that's not my issue at all.
Well,
My issue,
but you've been meeting on Tuesday nights.
I've also been meeting every Monday night.
Okay.
Because when we set up the comp plan meetings, as I said at the last meeting, we set them up to the opposite Mondays of the selectmen's meetings. Because then I knew, guys, don't even think about Mondays, because I got a meeting every Monday night for the next 2 years, because the comp plan is a 2-year commitment. I took on the task force knowing that it wasn't a forever thing. It was a small window in the big scheme of things. So, if we move our meetings to Tuesday, then I have my meetings every other Monday night, every other Tuesday night, and the schedules get juggled that much more. I'm just saying Wednesdays would work better for me if you guys want to move the meetings.
Mondays are out for me. That's all I can tell you. You know, I mean,
I think no matter what night we pick, and I'm not talking about the 5 guys on the board, but like you said, Martin mentioned the fireman at the last meeting. Stevie's got his ambulance meetings. I've got the refuse meeting once a month. I'm sure there's always something out there that is going to conflict with whatever night we have.
I agree.
Yeah, you gotta just find what works best for the majority and go at it.
Unfortunately, that's true.
First and third Tuesdays.
Well, if you want to use that logic, Jim, what worked for the majority at the last meeting was Monday nights. And
right, that's all.
And Stevie's saying that that really doesn't work for him. He's having issues with work. I'm saying if we go to Tuesdays, I'll probably have a lot more issues that I'm having. So that's why I threw out Wednesday.
what works for you?
Doesn't make all the difference to me, but I prefer Tuesday to Wednesday.
Well, like I said, I really don't care. I mean, whoever it inconveniences the least. I mean, I was good with Tuesdays before, and then it seemed to be tough for Chuck, and you didn't have an issue with Mondays, so we went to the every other Monday, the opposite Mondays, so.
We had an issue
Monday.
with Monday because he left the last meeting.
I understand. Like I said, I screamed loud at the last one.
Yes, you did, and I you know, I mean, I always like to think that you can lean on someone to cover for you, but you know, you think about October 1 is not that far away, and at that point, who's going to say, I'll cover your selectmen's meeting for you, but oh, by the way, I'm going to have to go to Miles and Brunswick when the damn pager goes off. Not going to happen. Understandable. I mean, I don't blame them. I do the same thing. It's much easier to find coverage when you've got a 5-minute ride going back. So, Tuesday nights and Wednesday nights, it doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't. I can honestly say that. The only downside of that is you're not going to bang Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of your selectmen's meetings.
What was wrong with Wednesdays? Southport does only on Wednesday?
Right.
Every Wednesday?
Yeah.
I don't know how they...
They meet every Wednesday. The other side of it is they meet at 5 o'clock.
Oh, they meet...
They're done by the time you start.
Oh.
They meet weekly?
Oh, let's meet.
They meet every week at 5 o'clock.
Oh, really?
What do they do?
So they're done by the time you start.
So if an entity wanted to meet with Southport and Boothbay on the same night, they could.
Southport is done before you ever start.
Yeah, well, there you go.
It's very seldom they'd still be meeting by the time you started.
There's been a couple of meetings that's made it past 7, but not many.
Not many.
Depends on
Sometimes they're
whether-
out of there by 5:30.
Oh,
If you take second and fourth, if you do second and fourth Wednesdays, then that doesn't interfere with the normal planning board meeting on the third Wednesday.
Right, and that's still second and fourth, which is the same as Boothbay Harbor with their
But-
Mondays.
Right.
So you'd still have, you'd have Monday, Wednesday, Wednesday. Southport would be over by 7 o'clock theoretically,
Yeah.
and we'd be starting at 7 o'clock.
That sounds like the best compromise there. That's good for Chuck, good for Steve. Steve doesn't care. Douglas likes Tuesdays, but
No, I mean, whatever, whatever you make the motion for, I'll go for.
then you got the Red Sox. Back to that.
Now, Stevie talked to me before the meeting and told me that he was running into some issues. I'm not opposed to moving the meeting. I never have been.
Well, it's gonna be
But
an
we
issue.
need to make sure that it works for all of us.
Right, I agree.
Well, it's gonna be an issue for you whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 Monday.
Yes.
Monday.
Right, yeah,
here,
Mondays.
Yeah.
Mondays,
Regardless of
right.
any request, so it sounds to me just sitting here in the very spacious audience section that you provided. that Wednesday seems to be the lesser of all evils. Yeah, maybe for poor Douglas.
Would you like me to put the calendar up on the TV?
You okay? Yeah. Okay, it's Wednesday, sir.
What a man.
Second and fourth.
What a guy. Thank you for
Motion
that.
we change June 1st to Wednesdays.
The second, fourth one.
Second, fourth, sorry.
I'll second that. Motion's been made and seconded to move the Town of Boothbay Board of Selectmen's meetings effective June 1st to the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month. All those in favor? Motion passes.
I just say invent a new day for selectmen meetings, 24-hour selectmen meetings. Invent a new day.
Let's see.
I would like ours are earlier in the day if we're gonna do that, like noon or something.
Like what?
Noon.
Noon on Wednesdays?
Planning board meets every Wednesday this summer. Do I leave Dan to take minutes at the planning board or Jim to take minutes at the selectmen's meetings?
They're both bad.
Well, if you have everything under video surveillance and recording, then you know.
Oh, that's right.
You're
We're
out of
going to
job.
record this one on the TV, right?
You're all done.
Okay.
Jim, did
Unless
you
you
got
want to-
that forward? I forwarded you the USB that does
The good thing is for me.
the voice recording.
Yeah, we have a voice recorder. It just doesn't work good for meeting applications.
Or well.
Because when you put it in, you put it in the front of the table, then it doesn't pick me up or what Frank says. So sometimes that's a little difficult. We don't want to hear what Frank says, but
As long as we point it towards Frank, everything's all right.
Yeah.
So where did you order GMC?
Pardon
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Public comment.
Yeah.
I think we've gotten enough public comment.
Oh,
Look, I just solved your schedule problem, okay?
what a negotiator.
Yeah. Arbitration's
Cool.
good, right?
I'll entertain a motion to review the warrants and sign them.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?